Okay, so welcome, welcome, welcome. Good evening, everyone. And that depends on where you're zooming in from. We are delighted to have you joining us this afternoon as we dive into our Bible study. I hope you can hear me. Miles, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, man, I can hear you.
Okay, Alexandra, how are you? Nardia, how are you? Can you hear me okay?
Hi, yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. So I am going to attempt, like I said, welcome again, and I know you will get your official welcome when the gentlemen take over. I am gonna um, share my screen so we can dive today into the 14th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. The 14th letter, and I'm gonna present my screen so I can show you exactly what we're talking about. Is it screen 2 or screen 3? Okay, there we go. All right. So there we go. Miles, is that good?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So today, like I said, we are on the 14th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and this is the Nun. This is the Nun. It carries the N sound. It has been adopted into the English language to carry the N sound, as in Noon or Nancy. That's the sound it carries. All right. So in the box, you're gonna see what it looks like today. If you were reading the Bible, if you were reading anything that is written in Hebrew, it's gonna look like that picture form that you see in the box. Beside it is the pictograph, and then you'll see the ancient way of writing this letter as well. Now, this letter carries the definition of the seed. It also carries definition of fish or activity, life, to sprout, descendant, offspring, faithfulness. All these definitions are associated with the noon. Okay, so here we go. All right, so this is a quotation from Jeff Benner in his book, and he was talking about the noon. He says the ancient pictograph is a picture of a seed sprout representing the idea of continuing to a new generation. This pictograph has the meanings of continue, perpetuation, offspring, and heir. And I know we can imagine and we can think about farming and think about our ancestors and think about them planting, think about that agricultural life that they go through on a daily basis. And we can understand how important and how relevant this seed is to their daily activities. 2 Corinthians 9, verse 10 tells us, he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food will supply and multiply your seed for sowing and increase the harvest of your righteousness. Now, I know this is not something that we talk about very often on this program, but as we talk about seed tonight, as we talk about faithfulness, as we talk about multiplying or increase, because all those definitions are coming from the noon, I want you to pause for a minute and think about how our Abaya has been good to us, how our Abaya has been blessing us. And then I'm going to ask you, what do you do with that increase? And it doesn't matter how small that increase is, what do you do with it? Tonight, I want to encourage us all to make sure that as Abaya blesses us, as Abaya increases this seed, let us try to make sure that we are doing our part. We are doing our part in terms of returning something. And I'm not going to tell you how to do it, I'm not going to tell you where to do it, but I really want to encourage us all to make sure that we are giving back. Find someone in need, someone who needs some clothing, someone who needs food. I'm really not a lover of returning back to organizations. But however you want to do it, find someone in need so that as Abaya blesses your seed and blesses your increase, you're also blessing someone else, and will keep the cycle going. And of course, when we talk about the seed and we talk about the heir, then we remember Abraham. Isaiah 11 verse 1 says, "A shoot will come from the stump of Jesse. From his roots, a branch will bear fruit." And we know the story of Abraham very well. We know these are our ancestors that we're talking about. Abraham says, "You have given me no children. It means that my servant is going to be the heir to all of this." And Abaya says, "Nope, it's not going to happen that way." And you know how they try to solve the problem by bringing Hagar into the mix. And then Ishmael came. And then Abraham says, "Okay, so Ishmael is the one that's gonna carry this seed or carry this line." Abba says, "Nope, I'm gonna bless Ishmael, but he definitely will not be the one." And we know eventually that Isaac came about, even though Sarah was barren. God made it happen. The miracle happened, and Isaac came about. And from Isaac, it's Jacob, and then the 12 tribes. And that is why we are here tonight. So we are very, very cognizant of the fact that we know our seed, we know our ancestor, we know exactly what is going on. And as we study and as we look at this noon and look at this seed and look at this increase, let us just be grateful that we are heirs to the kingdom. I am an heir to the kingdom. You are an heir to the kingdom. Let us be grateful and let us accept this noon in our daily lives. I hope that this seed of righteousness will sprout in us as we draw closer to our Abaya, as we learn more about his words, and as we get closer to him. I pray that this seed of righteousness will sprout in us, and we will be happy dwelling and enjoying this abundance of relationship that we can certainly enjoy with our Abaya. So I hope that we will be blessed tonight as we dive deeper into the presentation. Stanley, you're home already?
All right. Yes, we are home. We made it back actually yesterday evening, if you will. And we spent 5 days. It was, we had a 5 day, and it was, I must say, it was beautiful. We enjoyed every minute. The food was phenomenal. The people were phenomenal. Yeah, it was beautiful.
We're talking about the noon, so I'm glad you were able to enjoy that blessing and enjoy that increase. And that is my desire for all of us, brothers and sisters, that we will enjoy the blessing that Abaya has in store for us. And let us keep at the forefront of our minds that we are, in fact, descendants from Isaac, from Jacob. We are, in fact, heirs to the kingdom, and we will live that way. May Abaya bless us as we dive deeper into his words tonight. Shalom, everybody.
Shalom.
Now let's have Chris.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Oh, Stanley.
What's up, brethren? Man. Y'all man.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
was
man.
the accent selfish?
Oh man, I must say the land of Jamaica, the people, we had a blessed time, and man, I don't know. Y'all can tell how dark I done got being in the sun.
Got some tan.
And I got a little burn spots in my head or whatever with a skill pill. But other than that, man, we had an amazing time. Man, we're so thankful. I'm actually so thankful. We went on the trip, outside of, because I'm a natural worrier, especially when it comes to finances. And my wife's like, "No, Stanley, we need to go. We need to go. We gotta go. We gotta go for us, just to be away from home, just to reconnect with my wife." man, it was a beautiful experience. And even on another note, I had it's revelation hit me when we were on the transport to Negril. So he was in Negril, and you in Negril, we're going to Sandal, you got to go through Lucy,
Okay, yes.
and the town of Lucy, and they were on curfew.
Sounds like you learn a lot about Jamaica so far.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. So in that drive, it's about an hour, and to Sandals, it was about an hour 30, hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, because of Easter or the Pesach or Passover, they was on curfew last week from Friday. Friday.
Friday to Sunday. Sunday morning early, yeah. They're doing it for 3 weekends.
This. Oh,
looks
did I?
like you just froze, Stanley.
Oh, okay.
That's
So last
okay.
weekend, this weekend, and next weekend, that it's out. It's going to be lockdown from Friday or Thursday into Monday. Well, anyway, just a quick thing. I know we need to begin, but just looking at the flag, it just hit me where the driver was saying, man, he was just describing like the Jamaican flag, and he was saying how the green is representative of the agriculture, black is the strength and creativity of the people, and gold is the natural beauty of the sunlight. And it hit me when I looked at when you look at the flag and understanding the people and the culture, you look at and see the Tav. The Tav is right, and it just hit me. I'm like, and when he said that, black, gold, and green, of course, it's the only national flag that does not have the red, white, and blue in it.
Yeah.
And it just hit me like, these people know who they are. That's why the culture is so reared in praise and worship and just being happy, and you riding through the town, and you see people living in what we consider shanties or being poor, but you realize we're paying thousands of dollars to go and visit what they wake up every day and see for free. And so who's really poor? Like, here I am, worried about capitalism, and these people wake up, live in quote unquote huts. You think they're going through, but they wake up every day, get to pluck fresh food from the seed. They grab a tree and get food. It's just amazing. Like, man, it just hit me while he was talking. It's like, man, we got this thing really messed up. And regardless of the exploitation of their labor, just like it is in scripture, how you come in from all these national entities and they exploit the labor of these people, but yet they're still happy. And so it just hit me like, man, the covenant, and they understand that covenant, and it's in their worship and everything. It comes out in their even the language, how you talk, it sounds like comfort. Like the guy comes out, yeah, y'all mind, and just talking, and I'm just listening to it, and it's just like comforting, and it was just an amazing experience to actually understand the culture from the outside, but to actually go there and participate in it, and happen to fall under the Pesach. It was a blessing, man. It was just amazing.
I was born under that flag, and I did not look at it the way you just explained it.
Man, it just hit me while he was talking, and I was talking to another couple that was there, and I'm explaining to him, and it like the Most High said, look at my flag, and it literally showed me when he said the black, gold, and green, and I saw the air, like, that's the top, the promise. And people might say, well, don't other people have the cross? This is the difference is they didn't do it for the purpose of connecting to a spirit or the Most High. When you say the black is this, green is for the strength, black is for the strength. After I left, green was for the prosperity and the farming. It connects to the culture of these people. So it just hit me. Like, it was just amazing. And it's just like a revelation, like that's my sign. They know.
Wow. that was good. That was good. I've not been there in like 2 years. Last time we were there, Chev, it was like not last year.
2019.
2019, December, yeah. But yeah, Jamaica.
It was amazing. It was amazing.
We have natural food. It just grows.
It literally it's in the ground. Like, even when you go back to the Exodus, the very ground of Goshen was blessed because of the presence of the Hebrews. And before the people got there, it was barren. You couldn't grow sugar cane before the people got there. Now all of a sudden it's this fertile. Like it literally turned once the people got there. The land became blessed and fertile and beautiful and started growing plants that it didn't grow before. It just, like I said, it was just profound to see it.
I've always noticed that everywhere we are in the Caribbean, wherever we are as a people, the land is always fertile.
Always fertile. Even in the US, you couldn't grow cotton before we got there. You had to grow corn.
See?
But cotton, the two places, the two plants that financed the world was cotton and sugar. And where was it grown? The places we were.
Mm-hmm.
You can't grow sugar, or you can't grow sugar cane, cotton in abundance nowhere but the places we went. And that was in the US and the Caribbean. Cotton and sugar. It financed the entire planet. So it was just amazing.
Now,
and the food.
Oh wow.
Don't even start me on the food. Don't even start me. I had jerk chicken every day. had jerk chicken every day for lunch. I even had jerk pizza. It was amazing.
Wow. And you know what? Have you had a chance to eat like the East Indian mangoes?
No, they had mango. I don't know what it was. It was mango. They had all the fruits. They had the mango, pineapple. I was eating. It was just so good. Even we went to other places. They had Italian food. That was good. Hibachi was good. It was just good. Every day was good. It was good.
So.
Yeah, man, I got an accent now. Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
When I get in my space and goes off in Jamaican, you can understand, right?
Oh yeah, I get it. I grew up around that's also beautiful. I grew around Jamaicans and Trini and all that, so it's just a natural. Like when I hear it, it just sounds natural to me.
Mm-hmm. All right. So this evening, how was the week for everyone else, though? Anyone else?
It was a good week for me. I had, interestingly enough, a similar relation to Stanley, because I went to Arusha yesterday, which is like, it's another country in Tanzania, but we had to drive there. It's an 8-hour drive. And I don't know, this week I've been kind of, for the past few weeks, kind of trying to figure out like my approach to life and the direction that I'm heading into. And so I found myself just kind of sometimes doubting my own, beliefs and or at least how I'm approaching my belief. And today I was riding back on the bus, and I was like, God, like if I'm not going the right direction, like let me know, like if we're not really the people, or like just prove it to me, or prove to me that we are. And as I'm driving, because I was on the bus back home to Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and as I'm driving, I'm looking out the windows and I'm seeing these black shepherds, like with robes, and they're with their sheep and they're with their cattle. And these are the more like, we're driving past the villages because we're not in the urban areas, and I'm seeing these shepherds with their staffs, and I'm seeing these women with their head coverings, and I'm just like, bro, like these people literally still exist in the same culture that we see in scripture, but we don't see these images like online on TV. Like but when you're driving through like Africa, you're seeing people exist in the very thing that has been denied from us, the very identity that's been denied from us. It's just like, I can't not like see our history in this, because I don't see anybody else like upholding this culture even still. I don't see that passed down to generations with anybody else. And so it was just like a really interesting experience, like being able to really see it live. And I believe y'all might have like showed me that on purpose, because I was having doubts. But yeah, similar to Stan, was like, it's really cool, like being able to actually experience the culture. I think just puts a even deeper level, or a deeper reassurance when you're doubting. So it's not just a concept, you're seeing it actually lived out. Not to mention the fact that I talked about it before, but when you talk to a lot of people in Tanzania, you realize many people like have Torah like in their minds and in their hearts. They might not be able to quote it in scripture, but when they talk to you about their principles and their perspectives and the things that their parents taught them, you realize that the essence of Torah has been passed down through these different generations. And so it's really reassuring, I think, like being here for me. So a similar revelation.
Oh, that's good.
Mhm.
Well,
Amen.
someone, okay. This week,
Yeah, this week. Sorry about that. I just wanted to say this week,
oh,
personally, yeah, I've been leaning into humility or the humbling aspect of the walk or the way. Because I mean it's a very essential part of it, especially in the spirit of the season with unleavened bread. Removing the leaven, being less puffed up, or not just less puffed up, but in myself being brought low in certain aspects, and making that and kind of making it known, in a self-aware fashion. Um, not to if there's ever self-doubt, or even Miles was talking about doubt, not particularly in the sense of like who the people might be, but he mentioned like the approach, right? Especially to certain aspects, um, or certain even in certain relationships, personal relationships, right? Because your personal relationships tend to have like there's a reflection or how it is broadcasted from your personal relationships, and you are a representative, whether you'd like to be or not, right? And how people will look at or view the awakening, or someone that would speak or claim to represent for Yah's people or the Most High, right? So at the same time, just bringing certain things full circle. Um, so but also making it known that if even if I'm going to doubt in myself, letting it be known that there's no good thing in myself, in my flesh, because like this vessel is but dust, and it naturally resides in a constant state of um like a self-preservation pride mentality, right? And regardless of whether or not at your core you may want to truly desire not to be that way. It's always a constant process of putting the flesh to death. And I've been trying to get to a place of a balance where you yeah you might have self doubt, but never doubt the word that the Most High places in your spirit when moving forward. Um, Also, with the understanding that it is an interesting balance to be low, to be humbled, and to be meek. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to be extremely nice, if you know what I mean, right? But you can be stern and put forth your truth. At the same time, being humbled, and then in your humility, the Most High Himself is likely to exalt you in that humility, because we are separate, and there is a piece of being special, so to speak, being a part of the people. But it's easy for that to overtake, your mentality, and sever you from the view of being calm, right? That's good, right? To
Yep.
make sure, right? So are being functional in that sense, because I even did a little bit of research into the understanding of what makes something evil, just like we had been looking at recently, and it also ties into what is evil is what's outside of the will of the Most High, outside of His directives, as came up in previous lessons. Is like even the tree of knowledge and good of evil in itself may not have been a bad thing. However, you not if the Most High said don't go there, you go there, then it becomes the object a bad thing to do, right? So just been doing a lot more self reflection. For some reason, I'm thinking that It might tie into the general narrative of the awakening in general, because we even spoke about the abomination of desolation being brought very low, and how many covenants have been broken by so many people throughout our many of our forefathers, even throughout our lineage, and there's only one redeemer, only one redeemer that can mend those, which is a reflection of the Most High himself in the flesh, or at least through his word, which is Torah, which essentially same thing. um but yeah, that's been my mindset for this week, and looking forward to a more comprehensive and firm, structured grounding. Because when you go, this one verse that kept coming up to my mind is who who can ascend to the heights except he who has first descended, right? And it being conformed to the image or the likeness of Yahusha to the best that it can. A lot of these things will show themselves. Even we were speaking about even David previously in the chat, and we know that he was one of those forefathers that is highly exalted amongst the nation. And look at him as some one type of a foreshadowing of Yahusha in a lot of ways. And we understand that he had a very tumultuous walk. And then I think about if it is for the Messiah to redeem even him, for him to bear even those, to put those burdens on himself. And I'm thinking about it, the character of who Yahusha likely would have been. Is likely not the type of, frivolous, or I don't want to say frivolous, but kind of a light-handed, so to speak. That the burden is light, but the countenance, we tend not, I feel like a lot of times we don't take into consideration the sternness, the firmness, the fire that might come with a countenance of someone so that can bear so much, with so much he's a conqueror at the end of the day, a lamb, but the lion. So yeah, that's where my mindset has been, but hope everybody else is doing well
Toda,
also.
Toda.
So
So,
that
I
it's
was
about
gonna
finding that
say,
balance. It's about that balance, healthy balance of knowing when to speak and knowing when to allow somebody or anyone you're coming in contact with to speak as well. So it's just balance, it's balance. I'm sorry,
fact.
Amor.
sorry, I was gonna say that for me, this week has kind of revealed like what the future of my country and even the world could look like, because I feel like as time is going on, England is kind of becoming more and more like a dictatorship. And I think it's so ironic because they're always the first one to condemn other countries and kind of enforce their like imperialist views on others, but they're kind of being kind of hypocritical because even this week they've like started trialing vaccine passports. So eventually at some point their plan is that you won't be able to leave the country, you won't be able to go into shops, apply for jobs, or do anything unless you've got the vaccine. And I feel like, I mean, for a start, the vaccine that the main vaccine is, I think it's called it's basically by Oxford, it's called the AstraZeneca vaccine, and they're kind of ignoring all the risks because like loads of European countries have already banned that vaccine because there's been seen to be a correlation between the vaccine and blood clots, and I just don't. It's kind of crazy, and yeah, there's just a load of things, and it's just really revealing the true nature. And something that my mum said to me today when we were walking out of a shop, there was like a few people, they were about to walk into the shop and they hadn't put their masks on yet, and she said to me, it's kind of funny because like at the beginning of the pandemic, if you wore a mask, everyone looked at you as if you were a criminal, because before they made masks compulsory, even when the cases were high, before they made them compulsory, people still wouldn't wear them until the government actually enforced it. So then I started thinking, like, you know, what does that say? Because before, when you wore a mask, you were looked at as if you're an alien, and now when you don't wear the mask, you're looked at as a criminal. And I started thinking, like, you know, why is that? And really, it kind of points to the fact that for a lot of people, like, their moral compass is simply based on the law, which I think is such a dangerous position, because that's how the country can so easily turn into a dictatorship, because, you know, the law's constantly changing and evolving, simply even just to fit those in power's like ideologies at that point. You know, every single time that you have a new prime minister, the law changes. In fact, the law is constantly changing. So when you have your whole moral compass built on the law, and you're condemning those who are trying to resist, like the vaccine, and or those who just have their concerns, you know, over the future of the country, you know, it's kind of, I mean, that's a very dangerous position, because I feel like, especially in England, they're a lot more kind of subservient to the government compared to America. They don't really question things as much. And so, you know, it's a given that, in their eyes, it's a given that the vaccine is safe, and that you should, you know, comply to everything. And of course, I'm not saying, you know, that we should go, you know, crazy and break all the laws, because some of them are there for a reason. But at the same time, I don't think that these people even truly, you know, actually follow the laws because they believe in them. They're following the laws because, you know, they're told to, because otherwise they would have been doing the same things that the government had to enforce. They would have been doing them from before. The government wouldn't have had to enforce them if they actually truly believed in them. And yeah, it's mad. I mean, there's a lot that's going on. There's like there was a racism report that the government kind of released, basically undermining racism. They did like a whole research study something, and they just concluded that, you know, that there was other factors that are more important than racism, and, you know, all kinds of foolishness, basically. Yeah.
Well, I thank you, Amore, for that first-hand viewpoint into what is happening in England, and I must say, by far, the rest of the world. I used to think that I should live in Jamaica when this time starts in the world, because we've been expecting it for a while. But I can tell you that the people of Jamaica is saying the very same thing you're saying right now. It's happening everywhere. My brother and I had this discussion maybe last year, middle of the year, and we came to the conclusion that for any country to stand up to protect its people, the people would have to first understand that they're going to suffer. Because the government takes aid from the world, every government. And by reason of doing that, then their laws are dictated. And because of that, then once something is being filtered from the top, it will reach everywhere in the world. It doesn't matter where you are. And if you are where you are and is not falling in line, then you won't be where you are. But saying that to say, aside from that, there's a reason why Yahuwah started this program at this time. Every time I come to sit here, every time I listen you guys speak, I realize that we are here for such a time as this. That the world is about to get tricky, more stringent. And as you rightly said, people's moral compass is based on the news cycle. So whatever is popular and trending and is coming from authority, that's what is true. Nobody researches anything anymore. Everyone listens to the news. They say, oh, okay, this is what the news say. This is what Stanford said. This is what Harvard says. This is what Oxford says. This is what whoever says. And even with Bible, you'll hear scholars believe. When it's clear in the Bible, what is the fact? But you hear mostly scholars believe, and you get a dozen Bible commentary to speak to whatever it is. And it's not always easy to ferret out the full understanding of what is in the Bible simply because we are reading from a far removed Western culture. And this was written in a Hebrew culture far removed from where we are. So we have to be crossing language and cultural barriers to. I'm having a sore throat, so you notice I'll be speaking slower, and if I put my hand to my ears, it's ringing in my ear. And so, yes, we are seeing the Bible from a far removed perspective. However, Yahuwah promised that in the last days knowledge would have increased, that he would pour out his spirit upon his people, and the young men shall dream dreams and the old men shall see vision. That's Joel, I think 2:10. And it is happening now where persons are seeing what is happening and they're waking up to truth. So in addition to the worldwide lockdowns, the worldwide deluge of misinformation, and I'm not speaking of conspiracy theory now, I'm saying misinformation from the officials, there is also an awakening of the remnant of Jacob. There's also a time that has never been before now where persons are awakening to the truth of the Bible. Pew Report reports in recent weeks that church membership has fallen below 50% for the first time in history. They say that it's postmodernism and it's secularism and all that. And yes, those do play a part. But at the same time, it is also an awakening where people, when they leave the church, they are not necessarily leaving Yahuwah. They are leaving organized religion so that they can be closer to Yah. Because when you're in organized religion, if you're just in the pews, yes, you can keep your beliefs quiet, and you will be okay by just talking to your friends. But one thing will never happen: you'll never get a leadership position holding the full truth of the Bible. That will never happen. And if you had a leadership position and start to push the whole truth of the Bible, you're going to be relieved of those. So it's not only in the world where this kind of dictatorial behavior is happening. In fact, if you look at any church, and I'm not knocking churches now per se or people who go to church, but if you look at any church, if you see a truth in the Bible and stands up and ask about it, and they give you an excuse and you stand resolute and say, no, but this is in the Bible, this is what I want to know, you're going to see the Rome side come out real quickly. You're going to be censored. You're going to be, all kind of stuff's going to start happening to you. If it's just a question and you leave it, then that's okay. Nothing's going to happen to you. But once you persist, you're going to see that all kind of things start to happen to you. It's the same in the world. You raise a question now about the vax, the veracity of them and whether or not they are dangerous in the long term or short term, and all of a sudden you're public enemy number one. And this is happening by people who are beside you who've never themselves even seen any proof. bad or good, about the vaccine, who have never researched, who have never read anything and cross-question or critically think what they've seen. People who have just listened to the news and formed an opinion, and suddenly you are under the microscope because you dare to question the status quo. We are in the season now. At sunset tomorrow, the Feast of Unleavened Bread will end. And I must say that it has been a challenging week for me in terms of trying to figure out, because my family likes bread. I can tell you that. And trying to figure out how to substitute bread. And that has been a challenge. And how to eat, and of course, because we weren't eating much meat recently, how to eat without. So it's a growing process. We made it through fairly well, our first attempt, and but it shows me something also, that there's far too much starch in my diet. So it reveals something to me in addition to the spiritual side of it. This week, Yahuwah did something to me. I must give my testimony before I go into the Feast of First Fruits and what it means. And to remind us, my name is Chris Carter, or Christopher Carter. We are studying forms, functions, and feast days. And that is simply worship took different forms in different areas. So then it took the form of sacrifices. The function of those sacrifices were to point to the ultimate sacrifices, Ha Mashiach, Christ. Feast days then encapsulate all this. The big question, whether or not the feast days still exist when we change the form, whether or not the function determines the prolonging of the feast day when the forms change. And we discovered that, but we will look at it once more tonight in yet another feast day. And that's a feast, the third feast, the Feast of First Fruits. There are 7 feast days which covers 7 months. And we will realize that 7 plays a significant role in the Bible, in Torah. 7 feast days that covers 7 months. These begin the planting season and end it. Generally, we will also discover that Israel was a farming community. There were shepherds and farmers. And everything that was taught based on this. And we're going to dig a little deeper as we look at first fruits. Each feast day has its own focus point. The weekly Shabbat teach us about Yahuwah and allow us to teach our family about Yahuwah. And as we spread out, as we learn within the family unit, we go out in the community and teach the community about Yahuwah, those who have not known. So the weekly Shabbat, it's a personal relationship. Then came Pesach, Passover, which tells us that because we're obedient and have this relationship with Yahuwah, Yahuwah had established the Passover to show us, to teach us that at the end of time, there'll be another Passover. And this is the grand ultimate Passover, where he will again pass over our houses. This time, not viewing the blood of lamb, but the blood of Ha Mashiach. So the Passover then is not complete until the second coming, because if we are following the slaying of the lamb, the passing over of the death-dealing angel, and the deliverance from Egypt, we'll realize that where we are living now, the lamb has been slain, but the death-dealing angel has not passed over. We are getting ready for that. And we are in that time when Revelation described that this system would be a dictatorial system that will command worship. So that's where it's going, Amore. It's a command of worship. It's a struggle between two kingdoms to build one or the other. A friend of mine asked me, but if they have so much money, what more do they want? It's not money. It's about how much they can get over into the kingdom of Hasatan. So the struggle is about worship, just as it was in Egypt, when Yahweh said, let my people go that they may worship. Revelation says that he will demand worship, and everything that will not worship him will be killed. Now, so Passover, we're living in the period of the night of the Passover after the Lamb was slain 2,000 years ago, before the death-dealing angel passes over. And that house now is the house of Israel. And we did discover that those Egyptians, if they were to be saved, they had to be in the house of the Israelites, upon which the blood was sprinkled.
Under the Dalet.
Under the Dalet, right. And Christ declared that he's the Dalet. I am the door. And the Dalet, for those who don't know, is the door.
It literally looks like a doorpost.
And it's a fourth letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Thank you, Sean. My wife just reminded me. I'm getting old while I'm learning.
Blessed be the wives, right?
Yeah. Yes. So we're here. We're at that point now where, yes, Yahuwah says that he stands at the Dalet, the door, and knock. And he says that he's waiting for us to come in. So we're at that point of the prophecy and of the object lesson, where we're in that season of heading to the final death-dealing angel. We looked at the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So on the 14th of the month, Abib, would be Passover. On the 15th, you would clear all leaven from your house, all yeast product and stuff like that. And for the next 7 days, you would eat nothing with yeast or leaven. And you would remind your children of when Yahuwah saved your people. The unleavened bread is a bread of affliction. So it reminds us of the affliction that our people faced in Egypt and affliction that our people faced in the transatlantic slave trade. And by the way, Egypt was a foretelling of the transatlantic slave trade. And while we won't go into that again tonight, those who were here before know, but if you were not here and you want to understand, put a question in the chat, and then we'll explain that, or we'll point it to the YouTube, or we'll have a chat on Discord. We will discuss that in full. And the Discord link will be in the
I'll go ahead and put it in now. So if you have any questions on that, let's go ahead and put in the Discord so we can focus on the questions referring to this lesson, specifically in the chat.
And that Egypt was a foretelling. Everything that happened in Egypt, from as far back as Genesis 37, comes right through, was a foretelling of what would have happened to us and the transatlantic slave trade, and how we would have left the land of our captivity. Okay, so this week, as I was saying, Yahuwah did something for me, and I have a car. You all know, some of you know I sell cars. I work on cars and I sell cars. I do all kind of stuff, but mainly what I do now is work on cars and sell cars. I have a 2012 Fusion that I bought months ago. But because of the prices of the part, I had just put it aside and say, you know what, let me wait. Let me do something else until I can find either buy a damaged one and get the parts off it, or something. I was going to buy one this week, and I was prepared to drive to Georgia to go pick it up. And it went over the price that should be normal for it. And I said, I'm not paying so much to drive that far. So I didn't. Yesterday, I decided I was going to go. We're going to go to Georgia anyway. And I was working on a vehicle, and I decided to go to the junkyard to buy a part. I had called the junkyard. They said they had it. On my way to that place, I decided to stop at another place to get that part. When I walked in, lo and behold, you know what I found? the
Fusion.
part for the car I'm looking for months.
Hmm.
And I'm gonna tell you, when I calculated the parts I got for that car would have cost me, even if I was buying it used from somewhere else, I would have paid maybe $700-800 for them.
Mm.
I bought them for $176. Yeah.
So, Chris, it looks like the Most High has a way of revealing Himself to you and working through you and with you, in relation to car and car parts.
Yes, he has a, because he works where you are to show you what.
Right. Whatever he that's
Wherever
100%
you are,
fact.
that's where he's gonna show up.
Or
So
whatever way he's going to get you to obey. Because I know for me,
yes,
he doesn't generally talk to me directly. He talks to my wife.
yes,
You know, I'm going to try to reason. I said it before. I'm going to try to reason with like, hey,
yeah.
I need you to do it. So I'm going to tell her. So she's going to tell you, and you're going to do it.
Okay, okay. So yes, that's what he did. And funny, I was looking for a part for Chev car. Chev car is a 2013 car, and the dealership is telling me that the part is discontinued. And I'm saying, you've discontinued a part for a 2013 car. Are you serious? And he couldn't tell me where I could get it, but I found it there. So I didn't go there looking for any of that.
You just went.
Just saying that to say that first fruits is about provision.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of this week, well, at the end of tomorrow, we're going into first fruit. And that's a day when Israel would have brought their first fruit of the land to Yahuwah. Before they start to bake anything from the increase, before they start to sell anything, do anything with it, or eat it, the first fruit of the farming product would have to come to Yahuwah. This may seem simple, and it may seem ritualistic, but I guarantee you it's further from that than you can think. Let us lay a foundation of where Israel was. You remember Abraham's servants strove with, I think it was Ahimelech for the well?
Yes.
You remember the many different strife for well, even with Lot when the land was getting too much? Saying that to say that the general area, even now, the Middle East is mostly desert. When Yahuwah says, I'm going to put you in a land flowing with milk and honey, bee cannot pollinate where there's no greenery. You understand that, right? So if you're in the desert, how are you going to get honey? Right?
Right.
If your cows cannot feed, then you cannot get milk. I'm unpacking it to simple terms in which the Hebrews, our foreparents, would have understood it. When Yahuwah says, I'm going to put you into a land with milk and honey, flowing with milk and honey. Yahuwah was saying to Israel, look, I'm going to now give you what you need for sustenance, provisions. And as a gratitude, as faith firmly placed in me, you're going to know Imuna, right? Something which is firmly placed or anchored. The Hebrew word, thank you, Stanley, is imuna, for faith. And faith, again, is not believing without knowledge. Faith is actually, as Shaul says, faith comes by hearing, hearing by the word. So faith is not believing some
hope. It's not hope or random, like if it's going to happen. No, it's just knowing for sure that
Yahuwah,
whatever I'm doing is
because of
active.
because of knowing him.
Of knowing him. Yep.
So
His promises will activate.
imuna is something being firmly placed on another. It means that when you know Yahuwah, you are now firmly placed in him. And because of that firm placement, you can now follow his dictates, as impossible as they may sound to you, knowing that he's all powerful. So again, faith is not just taking someone at their word, another earthly human being at their word, because the Bible says you should try all things, prove all things. So going back to the land being dry, parched, and Yahuwah here is promising, as Stanley alluded to. I don't know how you realize that we'll be discussing this, Stanley. Wherever we are, that follows us as a sign, the fertility of the land.
The top.
Also, the curse that Yahuwah says would seek us out if we disobey the law, which would mean barrenness in the middle of this fertility. That we would eat and still be hungry. We would drink and still be thirsty. So again, it comes as a double-edged sword. And it all reminds us, it was all designed to bring us back to Yahuwah. The feast days were designed to bring us back to Yahuwah. We discovered again last week or the week before that Shabbat, Shin Bet Tav, means to return to the covenant. Shin Bet means to return. Tav is the covenant, the same covenant you were talking about earlier, Stanley.
Yep. The X. X marks the spot. It's like a signature.
Right.
So it's as simple as like when you sign a document and you see that X, it says sign. So he's literally saying, I sign my name on my word.
Yes.
My word is bond.
Yes. So in all these feast days, the first thing we see is Yahuwah and his supremacy. And that is why you notice that the lamb keep coming back. Because the first thing we see is Yahuwah and the blood of Ha Mashiach, Christ. We're going to go into Leviticus 23, and we're going to go through a number of texts as we progress through the Feast of First Fruits. We're going to lay a foundation again of Ha Mashiach and who he is, and then we're going to go back to the provisions and what separates the feast, first fruits from the Passover, from the unleavened bread, from the tabernacles, from the Pentecost or 50th or Feast of Weeks. The different feasts has different focal points, as we discussed before. Passover was the blood of Ha Mashiach and the deliverance from Egypt, the first Egypt and the second Egypt, which is where we are now. Unleavened bread as seeks to remind us of the affliction that Yahuwah delivers us from, or will deliver us from. Because as we look at Passover, we look forward to the final deliverance. As we look to the final deliverance, and as we face the turmoil that we have been facing for the past 400 years, which is going to intensify real quickly, which has started to intensify already. Because I don't know if you realize that the mood and the temper in all this is that while we're not the only ones questioning the vaccine because we've been burnt by different medical trials before, but the target is on us. I don't know if you realize that. The ads are saying black people need to. The promotions are saying black, everything is saying black needs to. But I'm sure there are millions in Europe protesting, but I'm not hearing many promotions pushing towards it. Maybe because I'm this side and I'm not there, maybe I'm wrong. But the point I'm making is that we're under siege. Even if this didn't happen, the whole abortion edict is still happening. And African countries are being threatened right now to accept this edict or be sanctioned. No, so Leviticus 23, we're going to just go over, and so we'll keep reading it, and I'm going to share my screen while Stanley reads it because I noticed Stanley brought it up. So okay. So let me go to. Are you seeing the screen?
Yep. And just as the preface, we use the CJB. So you see the names Adonai. That's the reference of the actual name of Lord. Instead of using Lord, you use Adonai, and Moshe is Moses. So we use the CJB. So if you have a Bible app or whatever your Bible app you use, you should be able to go in and find the CJB, which is the complete Jewish Bible, and download that translation. Now that, of course, no translation is 100% because it's not the actual Hebrew, but because of the translations, this is the one that we've found that is the most accurate, or at least uses the proper Hebrew names and things like that. But like, again, it's not 100% accurate simply because it's not the Hebrew from that perspective, but this is the closest. It's way better than the KJV, NIV, etc. So starting with Leviticus 23, verse 1, it says, Adonai said to Moshe, tell the people of Israel the designated times of Adonai which you are to proclaim as holy convocations are my designated times. Work is to be done on 6 days, but the 7th day is a Shabbat of complete rest, a holy convocation. You are not to do any kind of work. It is a Shabbat for Adonai, even in your homes. These are the designated times of Adonai, the holy convocations you are to proclaim.
I'm sorry, Stanley. I didn't tell you supposed to start at verse 9. Sorry.
Oh, okay, no problem. Okay, so we go on 9. Adonai said to Moshe, tell the people of Israel, after you enter the land I am giving you and harvest its ripe crops, you are to bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest to the Kohen, which is priest. He is to wave the sheaf before Adonai so that you will be accepted. The Kohen is to wave it on the day after the Shabbat. On the day that you wave the sheaf, you are to offer a male lamb without defect in its first year as a burnt offering for Adonai. Its grain offering is to be 1 gallon of fine flour mixed with olive oil, an offering made by fire to Adonai as a fragrant aroma. Its drink offering is to be of wine, 1 quart. You are not to eat bread, dried grain, or fresh grain until the day you bring the offering of your God. This is a permanent regulation through all your generations, no matter where you live. From the day after the day of rest, that is from the day you bring the sheaf for waving, you are to count 7 full weeks.
Hold there. That's going into Feast of Weeks or Shavuot. So thank you, Stanley. Okay, so there are a number of things that comes out here. A lamb, a male lamb that is, a year old without blemish. I just wrote down some stuff earlier. A lamb has many interpretation in religion. However, we will look at the most basic, the farming analogy. The lamb is essential to the Hebrews for food, clothing, shelter, and as barter item for other items needed. Now, shelter, you may ask the question, shelter? But that same bet, the tent, Aleph bet, Gimel, Dalet, He, Vav, the bet, the second letter of the Aleph bet is a tent. And that tent would have been made of goat skin.
or leather, what we would call leather.
leather. And at the top would have goat skin also, or thatch, which is thatch roof, leaves and branches, which we will see when it comes to tabernacles. We will look at that when it comes to tabernacles. Now, so the sheep or the goat was everything, and the cow was everything to the Hebrew. If you notice that it started with the Aleph, and the Aleph is an ox or a cow that represents Yahuwah, strong leader. So farming was central to the Hebrews. So Yahuwah wasn't just pulling up some stuff. It begs a question then. Did Yahuwah predetermine them to be farmers? Because we would learn that from the Garden of Eden, Cain and Abel, one was a what? A tiller of the soil, and one was a farmer. Both of these were employed right here as we look in the first fruits.
Adamah was the first farmer. He was
Right.
His order was to take care of the land.
Exactly. So it begs a question then, the predetermination of our ancestors being farmers, Yahuwah creating the Sabbath before man was created. Well, for man.
Foreman.
And Yahuwah, pardon that mistake, because man was created on the sixth day.
I know what you meant. Well,
Yeah. So Yahuwah, before man sinned, created the Shabbat, Shin Bet Tav, which means to return to the covenant. Yahuwah had a covenant with our foreparents in the garden, which says you have a right to choose, but with choice comes consequences. I'm going to do everything for you. And we will realize that this happens all through the Bible. Yahuwah provides for us before. So we're going into a business deal. Stanley and I, we're going into a business deal. And we say we're going to sell lemonade. I'm supposed to provide the sugar. Stanley provide the lemon. And we get the water, however, whether we're going to both buy it. But that deal cannot happen until both sides come with their part of the deal. Watch what Yahuwah does. He brings his part long before we were even here.
Right.
Last week we discussed in Revelation 1 when it says that I am, well, the transliteration says I am the Alpha and the Omega. But the actual writing said, the Hebrew says Aleph and the Tav, the power and strength of the covenant. So Yahuwah declares from the beginning that he is the power and strength of the covenant. So guess what he did? He gives us all of his part before.
So in that same analogy, he said, all right, I'm not going to wait for you and Stanley to bring the sugar, the lemonade, and the water. I'm going to bring it all to you, and all you have to do is stir it.
Right. Exactly.
All you have to do is stir it. All you have to do, that's activating your Muna. He's saying, all right, once you stir these ingredients together, you're going to get great tasting lemonade. But all I need you to do is to have Imuna actively believe that once you stir this, it's going to be great lemonade.
And that Imuna now is based on the fact that you know that he provided the sugar, the lemon, and the water.
And the water.
It's not a question. You are seeing them before you.
Mm-hmm.
So based on knowing that he has delivered that, you now need to just, Imuna, be firmly placed in him.
Firmly placed.
Stir the thing.
Stir it. It's going to happen. You see the ingredients. you see the ingredients.
Belief means to walk in.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, now that Yahuwah says this, your faith is that since he's provided it, you've never seen lemonade or limeade or whatever you call it. But your faith is that if you pour all these three things together and stir it, it's going to provide a refreshing drink.
Simple as that.
So now your belief, Yahuwah says that Abraham believed and was accounted to him for righteousness. Belief in Hebrew, and I can't remember the word now, means to walk in. So it's not just a mental thing. As we said, Hebrew is concrete. It's not about mentality. It's about doing something. It's active.
It's active.
So it's not abstract. It's concrete and it's absolute. So here Yahuwah in the garden provided all on his part. All the couple had to do was not to eat of that tree. And as Yashakai mentioned earlier, it was not that the tree was poisonous or sinful. It is the disobedience to the command that is sinful. So Shabbat, our return to the covenant, was put in place before we even sinned. So when Yahuwah says, keep my Shabbats, not Shabbat, because some people think that it's just the weekly. Shabbats is plural. It means it is the weekly Shabbat as well as the yearly Shabbats. And over time we find that there was also monthly Shabbat in terms of the new moon. And Yahuwah recognizes this when he says from one new moon, Isaiah, to another, and from one Shabbat to another. So month to month, week to week, all flesh is going to come before me.
Yep. Month to month, week to week, year to year.
Right. So we're discussing now first fruits. Yahuwah speaking in a language that they could understand. Their foreparents were farmers long before them. Yahuwah commanded Adam or Adama and Chua to till the soil. Chua is Eve.
Eve. Mm-hmm.
The European name you got, Eve, that's not her name. Her name is Chua.
Chua.
And you know what that sounds like? Yeshua, salvation. You wonder how she got that name in the first place. So you see, everything that was happening there was planned before. It speaks clearly that our redemption was planned before we were even created. Salvation to rescue was planned before. Otherwise, she could not be called Chua. Now, let's move into. Am I still sharing? Jeez.
Yes, the lamb. Mm-hmm.
The sheep and shepherd theme is therefore well placed throughout the scriptures, and through the sacrificial system conveys a deep message of the relationship between Yah and his chosen people. We will see then that the theme of sheep and shepherd, and by extension priest, because the priest, I don't know if you realize that the priests were supposed to be the shepherd on earth, representing Christ, who is the master shepherd, Ha Mashiach. The sheep that he's offering also represented Ha Mashiach. As we said before, he is the power and strength of the covenant. He's doing all of it. We just have to believe, walk in his precepts, and be firmly placed upon him. Faith, imuna.
Stir the lemonade.
Stir the lemonade.
Stir it.
So that we can drink, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, not everything in the Bible is explained, and this is one of those. We do not know for sure why the first year, but we know why a male. There's a whole lot of commentary on the first year. Some saying because it was tender and meek and mild and harmless. Christ is harmless to some people.
But for many, he's very harmful.
A warrior.
Well, warrior.
The conquering lion of the tribe of Judah. And religion tend to paint him as this sissy person.
Wasn't.
Don't get it twisted. He was a strong black man. Don't get it twisted. No, so I'm not going to go with the speculations of scholars. I'm going to go with what is said in the Bible. And enough is said there to make the point and to prove who Yahuwah is, in spite of the transliterations. So we know it was supposed to be a male. Ha Mashiach, the Lamb, priest, and king. So now we find Yahuwah, Ha Mashiach, is the
Speak.
priest, the king, and he's also the lamb. Now, if you realize that this takes us full circle, Israel never had a king before Saul, before they rebelled, because Yahuwah was Israel's king. Israel's God is Israel's king. There was a Jamaican singer who did that song. I
Excuse me,
can't,
Dad.
yeah?
Are we? Is this in regard to the Passover lamb foreshadowing Christ?
No, this also, but all the lamb that is offered in all the sacrifices foreshadows Christ.
Okay, and in the feast of first fruits, there's a
Yep.
lamb as well.
Yes. Deuteronomy 23, verse 9 to, I'm not remembering now, 9 to 15. So all the feast days have sacrifices happening. And they all have a unique way of focusing on, firstly, who this is about, the lamb of sacrifice, and then it goes to the focus point of that specific feast day. So the Passover was about the lamb that declared early out and his deliverance. So it didn't really have a full secondary nature, because this was it, other than the deliverance. Feast of Unleavened Bread was focusing on affliction, and of course self-deprivation, and of course deliverance again, because this was twinned with Passover. First fruits is focusing on provision, and that is why you return the first fruit. And Sean mentioned earlier about it's important returning to Yahuwah when you from your increase. That's important. However you do that, I wouldn't say I call it a tithe to repair. It's a tithe, because a tithe is not necessarily connected to an institution. It's just a 10%. But it is, however, what I'm saying is that I cannot say who is able to collect that, because we cannot determine who is a Levite that easily. And they alone have that thing right. However, in the New Testament, Ha Mashiach said that, in as much as you have done it unto one of these, the least of my brethren, you have done it unto me. So if you don't know what to do with it, there's always some brethren of Ha Mashiach who needs it. But let's get back to it. Did I answer your question, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm just trying to. I don't know much about this feast, so I'm a little bit lost. But I'm just listening. I think I'll catch on in a bit.
Okay, the first fruits is about ground provision. It's about giving back the first of your fruit, of your harvest, the first that you reap, and the best of it, you give it back to Yahuwah as a sign that he was the one who delivered this unto you.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
So
Thank you.
Isaiah gives us a picture of it. Stanley, could you find Isaiah 53? We're going to read 6 and 7. Isaiah gives us a picture of Ha Mashiach. Isaiah 53 paints a picture, and we would understand that when you look at Egypt, Ha Mashiach, and the end times, you'll find that they run parallel, all three. It's like a tripartite ongoing prophecy. Because the things that happen to us, that will happen to us, that is happened to us in Egypt, that is happening to us now. Christ lived out all of that when he came. Every single bit of it. And so we realize then that when you read Isaiah 53 paints a picture of Christ's birth, death, Christ's life from birth to death. And if you removed he and put they, you would find that it strikingly describes our situation here in the West. And the world, for that matter. So, are you ready, Stanley?
Yes, and I just wanted to correct. You said Deuteronomy 23 is actually Leviticus 23. What gives you that you will the meat sacrifices. It's verse 18. Along with the bread, present 7 lambs.
I said Deuteronomy.
You said Deuteronomy. Yep, Leviticus. It says in verse 18. Actually, along with the bread, present 7 lambs without defect, 1 year old, 1 young bull, and 2 rams. These will be a burnt offering to Adonai with their grain and drink offerings, an offering made by fire as a fragrant aroma. And then 19, offer 1 male goat as a sin offering and 2 male lambs, 1 year old, as a sacrifice of peace offerings. And so verse 18, and then the sheaf. So yeah, verses 9 through 10, 11 are talking about waving the grains.
Mm-hmm.
And then from like 18, 19, 20, it talks about the meat. So yeah, it's Leviticus 23.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So I want to make sure we know.
We did read it before though, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me tap in. You say Isaiah 53, right?
Isaiah 53.
Okay.
Beginning at 6. I mean, you can begin at 1 anyway.
Okay. All right.
So Isaiah 53 gives us an overview of Christ's life. It also tells us clearly who the Lamb is. And I know we went over John 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, but there are so many texts in the Bible that tells you who the Lamb is. And Isaiah 53 now ties the Lamb to the people. Basically, ties the Lamb to us. Isaiah 53.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
And just go ahead and start from 1, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Verse 1, who believes our report? To whom is the arm of Adonai revealed? For before him he grew up like a young plant, like a root out of dry ground. He was not well formed or especially handsome. This verse here just makes me think of the pictures of him looking all beautiful and all thinly framed. Trying to make him look like a model. Yeah. We saw him, but his appearance did not attract us. People despised and avoided him. A man of pains, well acquainted with illness, like someone from whom people turn their faces. He was despised. We did not value him. In fact, it was our diseases he bore, our pains from which he suffered. Yet we regarded him as punished, stricken, and afflicted by God. But he was wounded because of our crimes, crushed because of our sins. The disciplining that makes us whole fell on him, and by his bruises we are healed. We all, like sheep, went astray. We turned each one to his own way. Yet Adonai laid on him the guilt of us all. Though mistreated, he was submissive. He did not open his mouth. Like a lamb led to be slaughtered, like a sheep silent before its shearers, he did not open his mouth. After forcible arrest and sentencing, he was taken away, and none of his generation protested his being cut off from the land of the living for the crimes of my people, who
Oh,
deserved the punishment themselves. He was given a grave among the wicked. In his death he was with a rich in his death he was with a rich man, although he had done no violence and had said nothing deceptive. Yet it pleased Adonai to crush him with illness, to see if he would present himself as a guilt offering. If he does, he will see his offspring, and he will prolong his days, and at his hand Adonai's desire will be accomplished. After this ordeal, he will see satisfaction. By his knowing pain and sacrifice, my righteous servant makes many righteous. It is for their sins that he suffers. Therefore, I will assign him a share with the great. He will divide the spoil with the mighty, for having exposed himself to death and being counted among the sinners, while actually bearing the sin of many and interceding for the offenders. Wow.
here's a prophecy of Isaiah outlining Ha Mashiach's life.
Wow.
Notice the analogy used in 6. All we like sheep. Christ refers to us as 1, his vineyard, 2, his sheepfold. That is why he says, I am the good shepherd. And I'm sure when we get to Samek, we're going to see the sheepfold in the Samek when Sean teaches us a Samek, the letter Samek. But so, as I said before, he is also the sheep, the lamb that was led to the slaughter to redeem the rest of the flock that had gone astray. This comes back clearly as the kinsman redeemer from among us to redeem us. So again, as Isaiah 28:10 says, line must be upon line, precept upon precept. No thought of the Bible can be expressed in a one-off text. It must be supported line upon line, precept upon precept, precept upon precept. So this kinsman redeemer precept, Christ being this kinsman, we are called sheep in verse 6. In 7, he is the lamb. Notice the difference here. The sheep, up until 1 year old, it's a lamb. After 1 year old, it's a sheep. So here Christ is now the lamb of the first year being offered. In Isaiah 53:7. While Israel, in verse 6, us, have gone astray, who have been here all this time, doing all these things. So the terminology used here expressly declares Christ as the Lamb. There is no wondering about who is the Lamb and who the people are. Because I don't know if you notice that Isaiah ties the Lamb with the people.
With the sheep.
With the sheep. Early out. It's tied together. Let me go to Hebrews 9. Stanley. Hebrews 9. I can share it. 23. It says, it was therefore necessary that the patterns of things in the heavens should be purified with these, but the heavenly things themselves with better sacrifice than these. These here is referring to the blood of lamb and goats and different offerings. So the earthly sanctuary was a pattern of the sanctuary in heaven. So whatever was happening on earth was a shadow. Again, we speak of the tripartite thing, not Trinity. I'm careful not to say that. The earthly sanctuary was a shadow. And the things that were going to cleanse the earthly sanctuary was blood. As a lesson that the heavenly sanctuary would have to be cleansed by blood, but by a better testament, and that is where the new covenant comes in, or the New Testament. Not new scripture, because they use that term to refer to the scripture. No, it's not new. Everything in the new, what they call the New Testament, is actually the very same thing that was in the Old Testament.
Same thing.
Only more perfect. But it's the very same thing that Yahuwah said we were to do, Christ came and did. So that when he died, instead of the what you would call it now, the intercession ended, it took on a greater meaning, because now the heavenly sanctuary would be cleansed. So it takes on a greater meaning, in that Shaul says that if when Moses did this as a shadow, you were punished for disobeying, how much more would you be punished for disobeying the Torah after Christ shed his blood? So here, Christ now, Shaul is saying in Hebrews that Christ is the sacrifice, the lamb. 24. For Christ is not entered into the holy places made with hands, which are the figures of the true. So what he's saying here is that the places that Moshe entered was a replica, or an example of the true sanctuary. So yes, there's a sanctuary in heaven. And everything that you see in this sanctuary is there. The only difference is that the sacrifice is only offered once.
Not repeated like the code.
Right. And just as the lamb was offered without the veil of the temple and the blood brought in the temple, Christ was offered without the veil of the temple in heaven and his blood brought in the temple. And that is why Shaul says that he's now entered into. Because I don't know if you remember, in the Levitical system, the lamb had to be slaughtered outside of the veil and the blood brought in. So Christ was slain outside of the veil. In other words, he was slain on earth. But that blood, he entered into the most holy with the blood. Not with the blood of a lamb, as a priest offered the blood. The priest made an atonement, but the blood provided the way for you, because the blood is in the life. The life is in the blood, in the earthly sanctuary. But within Christ, he is himself the priest and the lamb. And that is why we titled this section, Ha Mashiach, the priest, the lamb, the priest, and the king.
Right. Something that I also picked up looking at Hebrews 9 the other week was that all of this completely, in that the sacrifice of lambs was a shadow, like almost everything else in the what we call the Older Testament, was a shadow of what Christ would represent. And so, one, Christ does not come to when he said Christ comes to fulfill, it doesn't mean that Christ does away with anything that was before, but rather that he is the actuality and the entirety, the full fulfillment of everything that those things are pointing to. But even more, his blood is so much more than lamb's blood, because um, for one, it's perfect, but even more, lamb's blood, although it could atone for people's sin, people kept sinning or would keep sinning, so the lamb continually had to be slain. Christ, on the other hand, he has the power to actually now change the hearts and the minds of men. Is something that I was getting when I was reading, which is that's what I think you know, is prophesied when Yah says that in his renewed covenant, he will teach people his instructions, his Torah. He will write it on their hearts, so they will no longer have to sacrifice these lambs and then try to adhere to righteousness with an unrighteous heart. But now that the true lamb has been sacrificed, Yah himself will come and begin to change the hearts of men to incline them towards righteousness. So our and this is an ongoing process, but I imagine our natural inclination will be towards righteousness rather than being towards sin.
Right.
I tell people to look up, just generally, just look up the definition of fulfill. If you read the actual English definition of fulfill, it makes that statement, "I come to fulfill the law." The definition of fulfill means to bring to completion or reality, achieve or realize something desired, promised, or predicated or predicted. The second definition is carry out a task, duty, or role as required, pledged, or expected. Like, it literally defines the purpose or the intent of fulfill, not about doing away with the instructions, but to bring into completion or to activate the promise. He was the promise. He was the promise redeemer. So if you actually people just apply that definition, instead of thinking of fulfill as meaning doing away with, that would simply clear up all miseducation or any misunderstanding of what fulfill actually means if you just simply look at the definition.
Right.
And he was the embodiment. He was the embodiment physically, like literally the embodiment. Because the word made flesh, right?
Right.
So like even that statement in itself, and the Torah is the word of the Most High, is it not? So in that in itself, it's like it's a self-explanation, the embodiment of the word, which is Torah. So yeah.
And he was that promised redeemer. And like you said, Miles, it connects that it's more of a renewal, and the cleansing of his blood is what makes you righteous. It's not, we can't make our own sense. Our best is filthy rags. So if we understand that our best is filthy rags, that means we need a redeemer, and that redeemer's blood is perfect. And that is what makes us righteous.
Right. So we are seeing clearly here that Christ now, therefore Christ is not entered into the holy places made with hands, which are the figures of the true, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of Yah for us. You remember Isaiah saying that he was bruised for our iniquities?
Bruised.
Now he's going to enter. Now the lamb in the sacrificial system was bruised for the iniquity of the people. The priest would take that blood and take it into the holy every day. And once per year, right after the Feast of Trumpet, the 10th day, the Day of Atonement, he would go into the most holy. Now, Christ now goes into the presence of Yah for us. He goes on to say in verse 25, nor yet that he should offer himself often, as the high priest entereth into the holy place every year with blood of others. For then must he often have suffered since the foundation of the world. Let's unpack this a little. Shaul here is saying that Christ, you remember when Yahuwah offered the first sacrifice in Genesis, when the couple sinned?
Yep.
Shaul is here saying that if Christ were to offer himself over and over, he would have had to be offering himself from the foundation of the world when sin started. So he's here saying that clearly Yahweh did make a mistake when he gave us Torah and had to correct it with sending Christ. Because a lot of people tend to tell you that
Yep.
the law didn't work, so he had to send Christ. No.
It's from the beginning.
From the beginning. Yahweh had designed that from the beginning. Shabbat means return to the covenant. So weekly when you come, you're practicing to return to the covenant.
In line with that statement, Yahuwah would exist outside of time. He who was, is, and is to come.
Exactly.
And his word would exist in that space. So everything would have more or less been predestined. He knew what would happen. However, he prepared the rectification for that in that same space. So he would have been, or he does declare the beginning from the end. But the way that we experience things in a linear fashion, in reference with time, right? In a linear way. I think that's how I would have to explain it. Then we would see it in a different way, but it's like it unfolds as time progresses, and time is something that you said.
Hebrew is cyclical.
Right, yeah, right. Cyclical. And I'm thinking of how a flower would unfold. It's like you have layers to it and levels to it, in how it unfolds in a natural process. However, all of the components, all the petals had been compacted. I mean, the whole plant starts from a seed, right?
Right.
But yeah, it's just a picture that I'm seeing in my head of, how the Most High. There's this one statement that comes to my mind every now and again, that people in a physical sense, and scientists and whoever are always searching for the quote unquote God particle, right? The smallest building blocks of how things. But what about it? For me, it's more the God principle, because he's the one that structures. He's like, he has an order, he has a code, he has a way that things are structured and how things unfold. But it's like everything starts from one point. It's like, and he is that point.
He is
exactly, exactly. And everything unfolds from him, outward and in all directions. So I mean, regardless of how a person might want to verbalize or try to explain it, it will always go back to that one central point, and then to his, we can't even say his word, because from that point goes say you put a dot on a piece of paper and he were to speak, and they said that light moves in like in a straight line, right? And the first thing he would have said was, let there be light. And with those words, if Yahusha is the light, right, with that word you get the first projection in one direction. So you go from the one point to a two-dimensional line, and you work your way around. Right, you go to the furthest extent of where that light can go, because the light shines as far as it can in the darkness, and it shines the brightest in the darkness, right? And then to the extent of how far that can go, if you go all the way around, you end up with one big circle. You rinse and repeat. Sooner or later, I'm thinking right now, the picture that's being painted in my mind is how what they call it, like when you have an egg, right, from that is being birthed, and it splits, it separates, it starts from one sphere, it splits into two, and then those two split into four, and would form something of like it's like a replication process, and it continues in that fashion, and it develops into basic, the most basic forms to what we consider a body or life, right? So yeah.
Thank you, Yashakai.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, so based on what you're saying and based on where the study is going, I'm understanding the significance of the lamb and I'm understanding the relationship of the lamb to Ha Mashiach. I'm also understanding the first fruits, mean that you're giving your best. So looking at all of what we're saying and looking at us today, when I recognize or when I celebrate the first fruits, is it just an understanding of the significance of it that I need to know, or is there something that I need to do?
Okay, there's something that we need to do. And we're going to go into that as soon as we finish establishing the priesthood of Christ, because as we said that all the feast days, you see the lamb keep coming back.
Right.
Because Yeshua or Yahuwah declares firstly who he is. And it's upon this foundation that we are able to even return to him. So that is why we are following the Bible chronology in declaring firstly who the Lamb is.
Right.
We did it from different scriptures last week and the week before. So this week we're looking at from a provisional point of view, where this Lamb, he's in the heavens now, and we're gonna go to the next half, which is the focal point again, the second focal point of the feast day, which is where we are today, and that's its provision. So let me just finish this part of the text, and then we go to that. I'm gonna share the screen again. Okay. And as it is appointed unto men once to die, but after this the judgment. So Christ was once offered to bear the sins of many, and unto them that look for him shall he appear the second time without sin unto salvation, the King. So you see where the Lamb, the priest, and the King comes in? Now we're going to go to first fruits, the promised land and provisions. Leviticus 26, Stanley, 2 to 5.
Leviticus 26. You said 4
You
to
will
5?
realize that this comes shortly after the feast days in 23. Leviticus 26, 2 to 3. 2 to 5, sorry.
2 to 5, okay. Leviticus 26, 2 to 5. Verse 2. Keep my Shabbats and revere my sanctuary. I am Adonai. Haftara Bahar Yalmahayahu. Brit Hadashan. Oh, that's the actual reading.
You're reading the,
yeah. Verse 3. If you live by my regulations, observe my mitzvah, which is laws or teachings, and obey them, then I will provide the rain you need in its season. The land will yield its produce, and the trees in the field will yield their fruit. Your threshing time will extend until the grape harvest, and your grape harvesting will extend into the time for sowing seed. You will eat as much food as you want and live securely in your land.
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm sorry. Were you finished with the text? I wanted to ask after you're finished with the text.
Yeah, to verse 5. Yes, I was done.
Yeah. Okay. So when you just read that, it made me think about a question that I had even earlier today about why is it important to observe the law or the instruction of the Torah? Why is it not enough to be like just a good person?
The common question.
Why is it
Yeah.
That's an important question, though, not to diminish.
Yeah. I used to answer it in a simple way, because when I used to bring up Torah and people ask me, why is it important for you to bring this up? I said, because it's the truth. It's just that simple. But obviously that would not suffice here. So let me answer in a little bit more in-depth way. Yahuwah says that the things I have prepared for you, and we're going to get into it in Hebrews 11, verse 8. So Stanley, you can pull up Hebrews 11. We're going to get to it. Not right now, but we're going to get to it. Yahuwah says that all the things I'm going to do for you, I'm going to give you precepts so you can follow, so you can practice, and by faith, grasp the things I'm about to give you. So when they went into Canaan and they saw these people with some bunches of grape that two of them had to carry, and they thought that that was what it was. That was just a foretaste of the land, because Canaan was not the ultimate. The land that they were going to inherit, this earthly Canaan, this land flowing with milk and honey, this fertile land was just a taste of what was going to happen. So for us to inherit that, Yahuwah says, walk in my ways, do what I say. And by doing this, you lay hold, as Shaul says, that faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. Being firmly placed in Yahuwah and believing him, being walking it, it comes back to the same thing about belief. You cannot just believe. In Hebrew, to believe means to walk in. So it's not enough to just have a mental concept of it, but you have to eat the fruit of the land. You have to feel the former rain, the latter rain, which we're going to look at, and how that correlates with the first fruits, and how it is that Yahuwah provided this, and how it is that all these feast days span this very time of the rain, the former rain and the latter rain. So in a nutshell, it's important to follow what he says, because we are not just, it's not just a mental thing. It's a physical thing, walking in, prospering while you're on earth, so that when you go into the New Jerusalem, you will have an appreciation for what you've labored for.
I'm thinking of due process or procedure, and there are ordained times, right? And who better to get the instructions from than the one who created the mechanism to begin with? And with that being said, the mental picture of what many might think the Most High looks like, similar to we're speaking on the character of Christ. If you have the wrong impression of who Yahuwah is, or who Yahusha is, the character that they operate in, the authority that Yahusha operates in, the way he moves, right? If you don't have guidelines to institute what is Tov or what is Tav, right? And what would be Ra, which is evil, right? Then it's like you're left up to your own devices, as it pertains to what you want to deem as being a good person, right? And then that just leads to lawlessness.
And we wouldn't understand what the sacrifice that he came to offer mean if we had not cared for that lamb, the best one out of the flock, then had to kill him with our own hands and watch that lamb that you love so much die, bleed out before you and die over and over. If we have not seen that, we would not even know why he died. In fact, around us today, we hear death on the news, and it means nothing to us most time, unless it's a close relative. I know I grew up in an area where at one point you become numb to death. I've been seeing dead bodies since I was yay high. In the streets, in the fields. So after a while, that does not faze you. So we've become so numb, so that if we did not understand the significance of sacrificial system, we could not appreciate what he did, because here we are, 2,000 years far removed, only hearing, and from some quarters that he didn't exist, from some quarters that he exists, and we are hearing he would have become just a historical figure for us. Saying that to say that if we didn't walk in the precept, who could have told us today with surety that this was so?
I like to answer, I'm Mr. Practical. I like to answer that question in a practical tense. Like we have a father, like in your case, Miles, your dad. If your dad says, or your love language, like if your dad's love language is, I want you to do X, Y, Z in the house. So he says, hey, Miles, I want you to clean your room and your bathroom. And that will show me, your actions will show me that you love me, but yet you go clean the kitchen. Well, you would say, well, Dad, I did clean, and your father's going to tell you, but you didn't do it the way I asked you to. Abba, the way as Abba, I asked you to do it this way. Or even as me as a husband, and I try to love my wife in the way I like to be loved. If I'm physical, anything touch me, like I'm physical. Hers, she needs affirmation. She needs certain things. So if I try to love her like the way I receive love, she's gonna be numb to it. It's still not going to be enough. Like, and all I'm going to say is, baby, I love you. And she's like, no, you didn't love me like the way I asked to be loved. So the practical sense, Yah says, this is my love language. This is the reward of doing my love language. So that's the simple way of saying just being a good person is not enough, because it's not his love language. It's not the instruction. He says, this is the way I need you to love me, or I want you to love me to receive my reward. And as simple as that, whether it's a father, or adult or parent, child relationship, husband, wife relationship, we all have our specific love languages. And to meet the needs of that love language, we have to perform it. We can't love somebody like the way we'd like to be loved. We have to love them the way they ask to be loved. And that is good enough. Anything outside of that is not good enough.
In the book of Samuel.
And this all of this is really helpful. And I ask because I think when we're getting into like the feast, I think sometimes they can it unless we understand, or even for me, like if I don't understand like observing the feast from like a place of love, it can seem like, well,
too much,
redundant in a way, of like, and so I kind of wanted to, that's why I asked, because when you were reading that scripture and you brought up, Yah says, observe my mitzvah, or my Torah. It just made me wonder, like why is all this important, and I think it's a question many ask, and something I considered too, asking myself that question today, was that the Father, the Creator, gave instructions before mankind that all of creation is subject to, like he called the sun, he put the sun in certain, he instructed the light to be a certain way, the sun to be a certain way, the grass and trees to grow in a certain way. So everything operates in accordance with his instruction to function in the perfect harmony that he created. And so humanity, when I think of his instructions, I kind of realize that it's not only like a law for human beings, it's a law for all of his creation, just simply functioning in accordance with what he says, so that we can all of existence operate together. But when humanity says, no, we want to go our way, then we fall out of line with the perfect harmony that he creates, while also desperately searching for that sense of harmony and that sense of peace. And so that's also something that I was thinking about. But everything that was said is also very, like, practical and helpful as well. And I just wanted to clarify, so that even when we're like going into feast days, we understand that this is also an expression of love for the Father in learning to love him in the way that he has asked us to love him.
Simply put, it's a love language. It's his love language. And these days are festivals. So these are not gloomy days. That's the other part that, in learning these feast days, these are actual festive. It's a celebration. So all these every one of these is about enjoyment and is actually celebration. It's not some gloomy thing like, well, oh, it's a burden. Actually, people look forward to it. So I guess in modern sense, we try to make it look like, man, these people were under a burden, but they actually were having fun, if you will. It was fun to participate, not in the sense of like a amusement part, but it's like, I get to partake in something that my ancestors did, and that connects me to the purpose of Yah, and that is exciting.
And I feel like there's a sense of joy that comes from being, when you have the right mind, right? A sense of joy that comes from being functional, not necessarily happy in that, like I said, like an amusement park, like just a spark of a feeling per se. But um an analogy that was brought forth recently that stuck with me was even when Yahusha was brought to the stake, right? It's not that he was quote unquote happy or elated, like, he was sweating blood, and he even asked if it was possible for the cup to pass from him, right? So there was a lot of grieving, like there was grief in the situation. However, there was joy. He could have been joyous to know that in this the function that he is serving, that what will come from it, right? And then the joy stems from that of being a functional part of the Mosaic plan and following his instruction. And there's no greater joy than that. You're not going to get a better feeling, especially in today's climate with how the world is set up. In order for you to deem yourself happy most of the times, you will have to be you have to compartmentalize your mind or think separate. But if you think of yourself as being functional, even in the midst of chaos, you can find peace in Yahuwah.
I'm stirring the lemonade. That's joy in that. I'm stirring the lemonade. That the ingredients that y'all brought, me stirring the lemonade is joy in that.
Facts.
And if you, my screen just went blank. Are you hearing me, guys?
Yep, we hear you. I see you.
Okay. Okay. One of my screens just did whatever. Okay. That's okay. Yeah. Prime example, if you look at Saul, Yahweh had demanded sacrifice. Saul was sent to punish the Amalekites. Saul decides to bring back the fatted calf and whatever. Samuel comes and he says, what is that I hear? The bleating of sheep. Saul is going to blame the people. Samuel said a profound thing to him. To obey is better than to sacrifice. So it answers the question, why do we do it? Obedience. Yashakai, I think, brought it out earlier when we were talking about sin. Sin is simply disobedience to Yahuwah. So whatever it is, it doesn't matter if that thing was good or bad in and of itself. If Yahuwah says don't do it, and you do it, that is sin.
Just like a parent.
So again,
you get a punishment if you do go against your parents. These are my rules.
So we do it because he asked us to, and not because of the punishment that may come, because the punishment is not because he hates us. The Bible says that because he loves us, he chastises us to bring us back to him. Now, did you find Leviticus?
You said Hebrews 11?
Hebrews 11.
Yep. All right, starting at 1.
Yeah. So we're going to be looking now at the land. And did our ancestors see Canaan as the ultimate? We're going to find out now that they didn't. Canaan was just a stop in the journey. Canaan was just a token of the ultimate promise, which is eternity in the New Jerusalem. Let's read it.
Okay. So Hebrews 11.
Verse 8.
verse, you want to start at 8? Okay, verse 8. By trusting Abraham obeyed after being called to go out to a place which God would give him a possession. Indeed, he went out without knowing where he was going. By trusting, he lived as a temporary resident in the land of the promise, as if it were not as if it were not his, staying in tents with Yeshua and Yaakov. So this is Isaac and Jacob,
Mm-hmm.
who were to receive what was promised along with him. For he was looking forward to the city with permanent foundations, of which the architect and builder is Yah.
Okay, so that tells us something. Abraham, though Yahweh showed him Canaan, because remember when he was given that promise, Yahweh said he was standing in Canaan. Yahweh said, all this land you're looking at, I'm going to give it to your seed. That was a token of a land that Abraham would have understood before, from terror from all of these people coming down who lived in first-hand experience from before the flood. That Yahweh was going to recreate earth to rebuild the Garden of Eden experience where everything was perfect. So he looked for a land whose builder and maker is Yahweh, whose foundations are permanent. So Abraham, though he knew that his seed would have inherited Canaan, he knew that Canaan was not the final stop.
Verse 10, for he was looking forward to the city with permanent foundations, of which the architect and builder is Yah. That's pretty clear.
Yep. Continue.
So verse 11, by trusting, he received potency to father a child, even when he was past the age for it, as was Sarah herself. But because he regarded the one who had made the promise as trustworthy, therefore this one man who was virtually dead fathered descendants, as numerous as the stars in the sky and as countless as the grains of the sand on the seashore. All these people kept on trusting until they died without receiving what had been promised. They had only seen it, welcomed it from a distance, while acknowledging that they were aliens and temporary residents on the earth. For people who speak this way make it clear that they are looking for a fatherland. Now, if they were to keep recalling the one they left, they would have an opportunity to return. But as it is, they aspire to a better fatherland, a heavenly one. This is why Yah is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared for them a city. Wow.
That was powerful. That was powerful. I mean, I didn't necessarily want to cut in because I expect that Chris was going to jump in, but frankly, I'm not very familiar with that particular verse. I don't think I've ever heard it in that way before. You know, a lot of times you visit things and it just, you know, revamps or it shows a different perspective. But as Stanley was reading through it, the fact that he had said fatherland, right? Just that alone in how it ties into the relation between like a Aleph versus Bet. And we always hear about the motherland. And in a lot of ways we hear about the earth being a nurturer, right? But then we understand the earth is physical, right? But we know that the Father, Yahuwah, is a spirit. His spirit is a spirit, and he dwells and as a spirit. And it's been my understanding for a while that Jerusalem, I mean, there is a physical land and there was a physical land, but Jerusalem is also a people, right? And we also understand that our bodies are the host of Yahuwah, right? The body of Yahuwah also. And in a sense, we would be the vessels that would house the new Jerusalem, even in that sense, in a spiritual sense. So more than in a physical, more than in an earthly sense of, finding a motherland, to be grounded and rooted in spirit in Yahuwah. I was thinking as it was being read, in reference to the fatherland. I think that was powerful. That's just how it unfolded in my mind just now.
No, thank you, Yashakai. What did you stop at 15 or 16, Stanley?
I stopped at 16.
Right. Now, this makes it abundantly clear. Now let's go back to the land that they were being put in on earth. Because I'm painting this picture for us to understand the context in which we're going to return the first fruit. That is that Yahuwah, it depends. While we offer this first fruit for the temporal land that we're in, it looks forward to a city by faith. And you notice that the CJV keeps saying by trusting. You notice that? It totally changes our concept of faith. Well, not ours, but the general concept of faith as just hearing something and believe. If you trust someone, you know them.
Yeah, you have to build trust to a
Yes.
firm relationship. It has to be proven.
Yes. So what we see here is that when we bring our first fruits, we look forward to a city. A city that Revelation says that the one tree bears 12 manner of fruit. And I don't know if you realize that the fruit that bears in season, that's when you're supposed to eat them, because that's what your body needs at that time. And Revelation says that we're going to have one tree bearing 12 manner of fruits throughout the year. It means that we'll be nourished right through the year, like that. Now, in the Bible, there are some scriptures that deal with rain, former rain, and latter rain. Now, the rain being gushing. We're not going to go to the Hebrew words right now. Comes in the winter months. That's a deluge. The former rain comes late October to November. And the latter rains come March to April. Now, let us reconcile something here. Your Passover comes when? No, March, April. That's when you have the latter rain. Down to the end of the month, we have now tabernacles and those. The first four happens up here. The last three tabernacles, Shavuot. No, not Shavuot. Shavuot happens up this side. The last three happens in October. And that's when we have the former rain. Now let us put it in the context of first fruits. Late October to November, when the former rain fell, farmers would start to plow and plant. They would have rain through the winter months that would keep germinating the food. When the food was ready or to be ready, then they would get the latter rain, which is March, April. That's when they would reap. So the March, April rain now fattens the food that was planted earlier. This was when they would take the first fruit of that which was reaped, take to Yahuwah, because it is Yahuwah who gives the rain, the former rain, and the latter rain in their seasons. So the first fruits now represents Yahuwah feeding you, sustaining you. Now the question is, does Yahuwah still sustain us? before we go to the some of the text concerning the former and latter rain, let us go to 2 Chronicles 6. We're going to go through parts of 6 and 7. Second Chronicles. You
What
finding,
chapter?
Stanley?
2 Chronicles, what chapter?
6. And we're going to pick up when Yahuwah was... Give me 1 second, let me... Second Chronicles 6:26.
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Verse 26. When they sin against, did I change it? Okay. All right, make sure I have the right. Okay. When they sin against you, and in consequence the sky is shut, so that there is no rain, then if they pray toward this place, acknowledge your name, and turn from their sin when you have brought them low. Here in heaven, forgive the sin of your servants and of your people Israel, since you keep teaching them the good way by which they should live, and send down rain on your land, which you have given your people as their inheritance. If there is famine in the land, or blight, windstorm, mildew, locusts, or shearer worms, or if their enemies besiege them in any of their cities, no matter what kind of plague or sickness it is, then regardless of what prayer or plea anyone among all of your people Israel makes, for each individual will know his own plague and his own pain, and the person spreads out his hands toward this house. Then hear from heaven where you live and forgive. Also, since you know what is in each one's heart, give each person what his conduct deserves, because you and only you know human hearts, so that they would fear you and therefore live according to your ways throughout the time they live in the land you gave our ancestors.
Go to 7:13 and 14 now.
Go back up, 7, 13, 14. Okay.
No, chapter 7, verse 13 and
Okay.
14.
All right. 2 Chronicles 7, 13 through 14.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the CJ, but you want me to start at 12? It makes, so we know
Yeah,
who
you can.
Okay. All right. So just, we know who we're talking. So verse 12. Adonai appeared to Shlomo, which is Solomon, by night, and said to him, I have heard your prayer and have chosen this place for myself as a house of sacrifice. If I shut up the sky so that there is no rain, or if I order locusts to devour the land, or if I send an epidemic of sickness among my people, then if my people who hear my name will humble themselves, pray, seek my face, and turn from their evil ways, I will hear from heaven, forgive their sin, and heal their land.
No. I know that some persons would have been hearing this text many times over their lives and would not have heard it in this context of the feast of the first fruits. Now, Yahuwah is the one who gives us increase on our land. Remember, we started by saying that most of the Middle East is desert. You remember when they were at the water of Meribah and it was bitter? You remember before that there was great drought?
Mm-hmm.
You remember how Moses had to strike the rock?
Strike the rock, right?
Because it's a whole lot of desert happening there.
Well, he talked to what wasn't he instructed to talk to the rock, but he hit it instead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of desert there. So when Yahuwah says, I'm going to put you in a land that you have water, the rain, gushing rain. No, that's a stark contrast between desert and gushing rain. Then you're going to have not just gushing rain in the winter months, but you're going to have former rain and latter rain. Former rain in October, November. Latter rain, former rain tells you when to start to plant.
I guess it's almost like saying what we consider light rain, like
Yes,
the light rain to soften up the soil.
yes. Latter rain, March, April, you now reap.
Because that rain is now
Yes,
the plants are already ripened, but it's now growing, like you said, it's fattening up.
yes. And guess what? 50 days after that, the Feast of Weeks, all the grains would have been flourished.
So
That is why Pentecost happened at that time,
because you have
when
plenty
the
for
word was going to
everyone.
go to the world.
Mhm.
But when we
Plenty,
get to Shavuot, we're going to deal with that.
because it literally it connects to plenty.
Yes, yes. And I remember the first time we touched this while we're in the first study, process of salvation. I was dealing with life of Christ, and I touched tabernacles and how it went into Shavuot, and persons were saying, "How did you get there?" But then I was trying to show the significance of his birth, which we're gonna get to, and how it ties into all this. Now, okay, my daughters. So here Yahuwah now gives us these three rains. The Bible said it repeatedly, that he's the one who gives these rain. He called Adam to till the soil. He then caused a dew to come up from beneath the earth to water the earth, so that Adam's tilling would not be in vain. Now he calls us to a token of the New Jerusalem, which is Canaan, which Shaul calls the New Jerusalem, the heavenly Canaan. And it says, look here, I'm going to give you the rain, the former rain, and the latter rain. So that if you go back to Leviticus 26, 2-5, it says that you'll have food from this crop serving until the next crop, and you're not finished with this crop yet. In other words, you will not run empty. You'll have enough to save and to preserve lives. In other words, your life, the noon that we studied earlier, is preserved by the rain, the former rain, and the latter rain. Therefore, when Yahuwah says, okay, when you go into this land I'm going to give to you, bring the first fruits to me, it's a sign that, one, you're thankful and you know that your sustenance depends on him. Two, that you take this token, this earthly Jerusalem, as a token of the new Jerusalem to come, which Abraham in Hebrews, the Bible said that he looked for a city whose builder and maker is Yahuwah. So we observe the Feast of First Fruits now in anticipation, because this feast, because Jerusalem here on earth is a shadow of the Jerusalem that is going to come.
And it's amazing when you read that scripture that they knew, they were fully committed to that truth.
Yes.
Like, I know this, you're not giving me the promised land here, but I'm an alien. I understand I'm an alien here, that I know that when I yield up my breath back to you, I do not belong here, but I know for 100% and trust that you already have my promised land that you have built ready for me. I trust it. And that's just powerful. Like they were completely okay. Like, I don't care about this promised land on earth. They had no care about it. They was solely 100% for the promised one in heaven. Like, they
went there because Yahuwah says, go there.
Go there.
But their entire thought process was the land whose builder and maker is Yahuwah. Read Joel 2:23 and Jeremiah 5:2.
Okay, let's see. Well, I found, just in case people are wondering where the Most High declared the latter rains or the different types of rains, I actually found it so people can look it up. It's in Deuteronomy 11. And if you go from uh 13 verses 13 through 15. I don't know if we read this or not, but I just wanted to point
Go
it back
ahead.
out. Deuteronomy 11 verses 13 through 15. So this is verse 13. So if you listen carefully to my mitzvah, which law, which I'm giving you today, to love Adonai your God and serve him with all your heart and your being, then says Adonai, I will give your land its rain at the right seasons, including the early fall rains and the late spring rains, so that you can gather in your wheat, new wine, and olive oil. And I will give your fields grass for your livestock, with the result that you eat and be satisfied. So this is clearly telling them, I'm going to do this for you so that you can prepare. And this goes into the first fruits. And then after that, you have all the food you would need and be satisfied.
And notice that Yahuwah never said, go find some stuff, bring to me so that I can bless you. He says that after you have seen the blessing that I spoke to you about. No, Deuteronomy was happening 40 years before they get to Canaan.
Right.
We have to understand that concept. Deuteronomy was happening 40 years before Canaan. So when they walked into Canaan and saw this bounty, they would have remembered
that they've already
40 years ago.
Again, so it's almost like the lemonade example. Like he said, here's the water, here's the lemons, here's the jug, here's all utensils. I'm showing you the result. All you have to do is stir. So just keep. So from this point forward, that you've seen what the lemonade is, you now have the utensils to perpetually, year after year, to do the seasons like I tell you to, and you will have lemonade going forward.
Right. And everyone that walked into Canaan would have been a child when this was being spoken.
Yep.
But because they lived that culture, in Deuteronomy 6 it says, this book of the law teach to your children when they're walking, when they're in the way, when they're laying down, when they rise up, let it be frontlet between your eyes. Of passing down Torah through the family line personally. These children knew very well what this fulfillment was. They were now adults. But when this was being spoken, they were children. The adults had died. They didn't enter Canaan.
They didn't enter Canaan.
So when you say Stanley, he mentioned like the latter rain and things. And so I'm still new to a lot of stuff, but as I'm gaining a lot of knowledge, I've noticed the same thing that you said about Israel. Most of what in the Old Testament is about farming. And so when you hear most pastors and especially when they do prosperity preaching, of course, they mention like the latter rain and the former rain. And so as I read and now hearing it as well here is more importantly as far as like they actually had to depend on Yah for crops. So it makes more sense that when they mention the latter rain and things, it's actual rain and not just this.
Imagine it's not about money and all this other stuff. No, I'm sure it had nothing to do with that.
Even with I think it was, I know what they mentioned like Malachi when it says, they'll open up the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing. But then when you read in, I think it's, I want to say it's Genesis, whenever Yah floods the earth, or even not even just flooding the earth, even in other aspects early in the Genesis when he's talking to Moses and Israel and telling them the same thing, I will open up the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing and your crops will grow. It's like that's what
blessing is the rain.
Right.
Exactly.
It's not I'm pouring you out a Bentley, a plane, a Rolex. No, that's not the blessing. The blessing is the rain that will give you what you need.
Right.
Not necessarily everything that you want, but what you need and be satisfied. So
even the shalom is the blessing
peace
too. Yeah, being in the secret place of the Most High, being in His presence, that in itself can be,
yeah, it's that simple. Like it, and I'm glad you spoke. I don't know your name. What's your name?
My name is Christopher.
Chris, I'm so glad you brought that up because in your infancy, you see how simple it is.
Yeah.
Like, so it's not even about just because I'm new, I'm learning in it. It's literally that simple. Like man has created these paradigms and all this other stuff that makes it seem so difficult to
Yeah.
understand who Yah is. And you're like, man, I gotta have a doctorate and a master's and full bachelor's just to even have a glimpse. But it's really that simple. It's literally just how you called it. That simple.
Right.
Stanley, go to Deuteronomy 28
Deuteronomy 28.
before we get to Joel or Jeremiah.
And where you want to start at?
12.
12. We're gonna go to 12, which is okay. Let me start at 11 because the CJB it groups it different from like the KJV and stuff. So I'll start at 11 if you don't mind. Verse 11: Adonai will give you great abundance of good things, of the fruit of your body, the fruit of your livestock, and the fruit of your land in the land Adonai swore to your ancestors to give to you. Verse 12: Adonai will open for you his good treasure, the sky, to give your land its rain at the right seasons and to bless everything you undertake. You will lend to many nations and not borrow. That makes me connect to that verse. The slave is debt. What is it? You're a debt to your slave or slave to your debtors or something, like talking about debt, being in debt. And it correlates when you have too much debt, you're slave to the debtor. Yes, that verse. I had it all mixed up part of it, but that connects to me. That connects to that. You will lend to many nations and not borrow. Adonai will make you the head and not the tail, and you will be only above, never below. If you will listen to, observe, and obey the mitzvah or laws of Adonai your God, and not turn away from any of the words I am ordering you today, neither to the right nor to the left, to follow after other gods and serve them. But if you refuse to pay attention to what Adonai your God says, and do not observe and obey all his mitzvah, laws and regulations or teachings, which I'm giving you today, then all of the following curses will be yours in abundance. A curse on you in the city and a curse on you in the countryside. A curse on your grain basket and kneading bowl. A curse on the fruit of your body, the fruit of your land, and the young of your cattle and flocks. A curse on you when you come in, and a curse on you when you go out. Wow. Adonai will send on you curses, disasters, and frustration in everything you set out to do until you are destroyed and quickly perish because of your evil actions in abandoning me. Adonai.
Skip down to 68 now.
Oh, which one? Where you want to
go? Same 28.
Whew. Man, finally, Adonai will bring you back in his ships to Egypt, the place of which I said to you, you will never see it again. And there you will try to sell yourselves as slaves to your enemy, but no one will buy you. These are the words of the covenant which Adonai ordered Moshe to make with the people of Israel in the land of Moab. All
right. That translation that they use is try to sell yourself as slaves. It's not correct. It says, and you will be sold and no one will buy you. Buy here means redeem. But you have to understand is that the Jewish people were translating this.
Yes.
So there's
that's correct. That's definitely correct, because I'm about to make that same point.
Go ahead.
Did not correlate to slavery?
Huh?
So does Deuteronomy 28 not correlate to slavery?
It does, but
the context of verse 68 is off. And like I said, the CJB is not 100 because it is written by Jewish people, and so they wouldn't take on the look. So you got to look at how they're interpreting. They're interpreting it as this is not us in a sense. This is the slaves, which is we weren't slaves. They're looking at it from a perspective of them, not the Hebrews.
I keep hearing that sound.
Yeah, I don't know if that's somebody's phone or.
I don't know where it's coming from, but it's coming from somewhere. So why they interpreted it this way? Because transatlantic slave trade marks the fulfillment of of many prophecies, not just Deuteronomy. Numbers 24, Genesis 15, 13, many prophecies. If they had interpreted this the way it should be, and you shall be sold into slavery, and no man shall buy you. Buy here, Gaal, means to redeem. If you remember that the kinsman redeemer, which we talked about earlier with the sheep and the lamb, and Christ being the kinsman redeemer to redeem the sheep, the kinsman redeemer was a next of kin near to you that could redeem you if you got poor and sold yourself into slavery. When Yahuwah says that no man will buy you, you'll be sold into slavery. Buy actually means redeem. The word there is ga'al, which means to redeem. Redeem means to buy back or to avenge of blood.
Yeah,
So
the
in other
Common
words,
English Bible has it right. They have this part right. They actually have it correct.
as redeem.
Yeah, it says, finally the Lord will take you back to Egypt in ships by the route I promise you would never see again. There you would try to sell yourself as slave, both male and female, but no one will want to buy you back. Well, no one will want to buy you. So it's a little bit different, but it's close to a little bit closer to what we read in the CJB, but it's still not, I guess, not 100% either.
What the correct translation tells us is what we're seeing now. We're here, the Bible said that we will be here 400 years. Genesis 15:30, know for surety that your seed shall be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and they shall afflict them 400 years. For 400 years, we've been protesting in the West. We're still protesting. Different kinds of murder, whether it's abortion by edict or whether it's murder by police, whatever. In our homeland, famine is
Yeah,
killing us like
quiet until over.
huh?
Sorry, one thing I wanted to say is that a lot of folks in the awakening will say, well, it's been the 400 years and like we're not everybody is like if there wasn't like an immediate switch or a snap of the fingers. However, in that script it does say after 400 years will I judge that nation.
Mm-hmm.
So the judgment in that year between 2019 2020, it's almost like an alternate window, like a alternate reality, like a whole just like there was a major tear in the veil in that time frame, and it's
COVID-19.
really hard. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's extremely hard for even me to express that and understand exactly how profound it was, and not just on a personal level, but it's like it echoed throughout the entire earth. Exactly. So yeah, and there's no undoing that. It's just going to continue to ripple.
Right.
Yeah.
And we see that at the dawn of the 400th year, the world became in a chaos. I don't know if you realize that since 2019 till now, the world has been in a spiral. Governments toppled, some killed, all kind of crazy stuff. And the Bible did predict this. And it says that you will be sold into slavery and no man shall redeem you. This means that there'll be no soldier to come and take you from your captivity. And if you read Isaiah 11:11, it clearly states who is going to take us from this captivity. I don't know if you want to find it for us, Stanley. It clearly states.
Can I also ask, why were there curses? Was it a measure of discipline because of obedience, or was it something else?
No, it was a measure of discipline. He actually went on to say that he will not completely destroy us.
The curses also serve as a marker, don't they? Because he would have also known the heart of Israel. He laid before them life and death. Israel chose death, but if you look at those markers, the curses, they're attached to one group of people right now. So right now, if you ever needed a highlight to find who the people are, you're not going to find another set of people that check off all of those boxes.
Yes.
It's us.
There's only one set of people that has been in a captivity for 400 years. There's one set of people that is hated all over the world for no good reason. There's one set of people who used to lend to the world and whose land has all the resources of the world, yet they're borrowing from the world, and that's black people. Only one set of people.
Borrowing from everyone else.
Yeah, Yet our land has all the resource. 60% of the arable land or the fertile land is in Africa. 60% of the world's fertile land is in Africa. Yet Africa is on the receiving end of aid at every single time. And black people in the West who've been torn from Africa, mainly from the kingdom of Judah, has been on the receiving end of numerous assault
Global,
and
anywhere,
aggression in the
whether it's
world.
India, because
And
you
the
have to remember the sub-Saharan slave trade. So you have Europe in participating in the transatlantic, and then you had the Arab nations participating in the trans-Saharan. So
right.
we disperse India, China, all over Asia, Australia, everywhere. The Aborigines, everywhere.
And it's interesting how they give these two slave trades pretty names, trans-Sub-Saharan and transatlantic. They were the Arab and Christian slave trades. That's what they were. But they give you some pretty names so you don't know who was actually enslaving you. But they were actually being done by the Arabs and the Christians.
Yep.
But
simple. That's 100% fact. You could,
yeah.
That's simple Google. That's a Google.
Yeah.
It's a simple Google search.
So as we have many more texts that we could cover, but we want to cover Joel 2:23 to see the promise of what Yahuwah is going to do for us. I think Chef asked the question if it was just to punish us or it was to redeem us. Joel 2:23. You can begin at 20.
Yep, 2:23. Miko, you want to go what 20?
Yeah.
All right, verse 20. This is coming from Joel 2:23. And it says, "Be glad." No, you said 21. I'm sorry.
Can begin at 20.
Okay, 20. "No, I will take the northerner away, far away from you, and drive him to a land that is waste and barren, with his vanguard toward the eastern sea, and his rear guard toward the western sea. His stench and his rottenness will rise, because he has done great things. Don't fear, O soil, be glad, rejoice, for Adonai has done great things. Don't be afraid, wild animals, for the desert pastures are green. The trees are putting out their fruit. The fig tree and vine are giving full yield. Be glad, people of Zion. Rejoice in Adonai your God, for he is giving you the right amount of rain in the fall. He makes the rain come down for you, the fall and spring rains. This is what he does first. Then the floors will be full of grain, and the vats overflow with wine and olive oil. I will restore to you the years that the locusts ate, the grasshoppers, sheer worms, and cutter worms, my great army that I sent against you. You will eat until you are satisfied, and will praise the name of Adonai your God, who has done with you such wonders. Then my people will never again be shamed. You will know that I am with Israel, and that I am Adonai your God, and that there is no other. Then my people will never again be shamed."
You see
So,
that?
don't this reaffirms that the very land that was once barren is blessed from our presence? This is what we were talking about in the beginning. It's like the very land of the presence of these people was continuously blessed because they were on it.
That's true. But he looks forward here to the New Jerusalem.
No, okay. So it's a dual. Okay.
Yeah. Yahuwah
but-
says, I'm going to restore everything that I've taken from you. Remember, you just said that he's going to cause your rain to turn to dust and famine, and this curse is going to pursue you in the city and in the fields and in the countries. And now Yahuwah says, I'm going to restore all to you. Everything. I'm going to give it back to you once you turn.
I have a question too.
Mm.
It's kind of going off of what you said about the New Jerusalem, and I've read it. I think based off of this too, and in Deuteronomy 29, which talks about if we turn back to Yah and obey His commandments, that He will bring us back out of. So I guess this will be the modern day Egypt. But I also read something else. I can't remember if it was Revelations, but it also mentioned the New Jerusalem, and it had me question what we've been taught as far as the rapture.
Oh,
No,
Everybody, everybody's going to ascend into heaven, and then when I read the scriptures, it's like that's for, and then I could be wrong, but from what I've read, it just seems like we're all going to kind of like move into I guess another new land, and then y'all's going to bless that land and everything. He's going to kind of like bring us back out and just instead of everybody just ascending into heaven and that being the big kind of like the Big Bang per se.
all
well,
right.
you're correct, and the rapture is not biblical. But
Yeah.
I mean, with what the second Chris is saying, I'm hearing that, well, we know that the kingdom is within you, right? And we know that things do manifest, or before they manifest in the physical, there's a spiritual seed that is planted, or it has to be realized in the spirit first. So I mean, initially, it would definitely have to be from that place, in that spiritual place, before we would ever see the fruits of it come about in the physical.
So, okay, so the rapture is actually not biblical. And to be raptured means to be taken up, and I can't cover it tonight, but know that the rapture that you hear churches speak of about persons just disappearing, that's not true. Shaul clearly said that we'll be caught up to meet him.
right,
Um,
and everybody would know. It's like there's
there's
no
no
secret.
disappearance of anyone.
Yeah, there's no secret
And
meeting or secret heaven. Yes.
but Yahweh does describe the New Jerusalem in terms. New Jerusalem will be in Northeast Africa, where the Mount of Olives now is. And so, again, in many ways more than one, the stone that the builder refused will become the head of the corner, because Africa now will become, again, the center of the universe. What? My wife was asking a question. Okay, so basically, without going too deep in that, yes, Yahuwah says that he will give us a new Jerusalem. Again, it underscores the fact that when they went into Canaan, which Jerusalem was just a headquarters, actually, because Canaan took up all of Iraq, Iran, all of that place.
Yeah, it's a large, very
Yeah.
large territory.
So we are thinking of Jerusalem when we are thinking of, but Jerusalem again, the new Jerusalem would be the center of the universe and the center of earth. There will be activity happening outside of the city as well. And the Bible says that we'll come into the city to worship him. But it's not that will only be the only place. Coming back to the point that when we celebrate first fruits, it looks back at the token of the New Jerusalem that Yahuwah sent to our fathers. They believed without even seeing it. Many of them knew that they would not see it at all in their flesh, but unselfishly taught their children to walk towards it. As we celebrate Feast of First Fruits, we remind ourselves of the selflessness of our forefathers and the faithfulness of Ha Mashiach to deliver the city of which our forefathers were given a token, which was the earthly Jerusalem. But we look for a city whose builder and maker is Yahuwah. And as we give back to him for his provision, we acknowledge that there will come a time when we will be justified by him, and we will live in a land flowing with milk and honey, streets of gold, walls of jasper. That's the ultimate. That's why we still observe the feast days. That's a function of the feast day, to point us to a land beyond the one we're seeing. I hope I said it. I hope I said enough. I think we're out of time. If there's anything that we need to clarify, let us do it in 5 minutes, and then we're out of here.
And for everybody who, if anybody came new, I put the we have a Discord. So we have, matter of fact, let me do it now. We have a YouTube. So if you want to review any of the older sessions, and this one will be going up sometime soon, I'm going to put that in the chat and our Discord group chat. So if you have any questions that we haven't answered here, for you, Chris, if you needed further explanation of what the rapture is, you can put it in the Discord.
Okay.
And so that way it can be broken down further. So let me put these in the chat. So, all right, so I'm putting this. So this is the YouTube.
Just a point to the last point that was made about the misconception, I guess, of the rapture and the end of the world. It's still something I'm still like learning about for myself, but I know that one thing that Revelation 21 speaks on is the New Jerusalem being a holy city coming down to earth. And so it gives me the image that, yes, for one, our eternal dwelling will be in and on a renewed earth, and not so much leaving earth to go to heaven.
Right.
Because from what I understand, heaven is Yah's dwelling place. And the earth is what he has made for us. So he's actually going to renew the earth and actually send down the holy city to the Mount of Olives for his people to live. And from what I understand, people will still occupy the rest of the world. But the Africa is where the New Jerusalem, the holy city that comes down from earth, will be placed. It will be the center of the economy of the world, the new world, I guess, if that makes sense, from what I understand.
The old new world.
Yeah.
You're correct that when we would be caught up, though, we're going to where Yahuwah dwells. So while he replenishes the earth, not replenish, while he revamps the earth, we won't be on earth while it is burning with fervent heat to purify, cleanse, and make new.
The sin can't exist anymore. Sin, that's why you get in Revelations that sin is consumed. It says it's not what Christianity teaches, that you will burn for eternal life, because even from that context, if you are on burning for eternal life, that's still eternal life. So he said the reward for the just is eternal life. So sin is consumed by the flames. It's burnt up. It's not burning eternally. But when you get in Revelation, we will all see the remnants of that burning. We will look and see this was the finality of sin.
So
okay, that clarifies something, because that was the part that I was confused about, was the 1,000 years that were supposedly not gonna be on earth. Yeah, that's the only part I was confused about, but that kind of,
and that's what it's a rapture. The Christian construct of the rapture is them taking or is transliterating the context of what the Hebrew people were expressing. And so because they didn't understand Torah and Tanakh, they just made up a word and said rapture, when it's really just being caught up for that temporary millennial period and then it coming down. But they took it as people disappearing and being caught up and you don't know, and it's just random. So they didn't have any context, because they just took what they thought it meant and just made the rest up.
So while Yah is building the New Jerusalem, we would be technically in heaven for a temporary.
While he's building,
it's not built, it's done.
Okay.
The New Jerusalem is in place.
It's in place
already.
Gotcha.
Because to say that he's building it, right. it's one of those things where it's hard to do, but we have to unlearn the natural instinct to think that Yah is reactive. He's proactive. So he's not reactive. He doesn't react to what we do. We have to now conform and react to what he's done, not what he's doing. He's done it. So it's that unlearning process where we have to just look at it like, no. If we're looking at that Yah is reacting to us, we got the wrong. It's wrong. So we got to kind of like, well, I'm missing something.
What does that mean for? And I can't remember, and it might have been a book of Enoch, and I'm still reading through that book. But in the beginning of it, somewhere I can't remember the scripture, but it did mention about how like even the dead are, I guess, awaiting themselves for.
And Sheol, the Hebrew concept is Sheol.
Sheol. So what does that mean for them? So of course, we all have like loved ones and stuff that have passed away, and so what does that mean for them who have already physically gone? Will they, I guess, in a weird sense, will they come back to worship with us? And
yes and no.
Okay.
The Bible says that and we read it since tonight in Hebrews. It's appointed unto man once to die, but after that is a judgment.
Right.
If you were righteous before death, then you would raise to eternal life. If you were unrighteous, then you won't raise to eternal life. You'd raise to what the Bible calls the second death.
That's you're being consumed by flame. So yeah, it's not what we teach in Christian churches that you die and go to heaven. In that case, what would be the point of the Messiah returning if all you had to do was die to be judged? So the Hebrew concept is Sheol, which your breath. So in the beginning, he said he breathed his life into us, which is the Ruach HaKodesh. That's why we have the spirit in us. So when we pass or go to sleep, that's why death is constantly referred to sleep. When we give up the Ruach, our spirit, or the breath that Yah gave us in the beginning, returns to him. In Sheol, we are at rest. It says in scripture that the dead know nothing. They can't be, it's done. Once you pass, your opportunity for judgment or anything after is done. So at that point, no one enters into heaven before the other. It says we all will have the opportunity to understand and know why we didn't make it, who didn't make it, and why. Our brains will literally be unlocked. And there will be no secret. There would be no, well, what if? Everybody will know why, how, everything, and it would be made clear. So all people who will be alive and can say the Most High is righteous and he is just. There would be no guesswork. There would be no assumptions.
So I hope that covered it all for the first fruit.
Sabrina had asked, so the New Jerusalem is not necessarily a place, but more like people's hearts restored?
No. It's a real place.
Real place.
12 foundation, 12 gates, walls of jasper, streets of gold, no night there, no crying, no dying, real place.
So what do the scriptures that speak of, and you mentioned it, someone mentioned it earlier about it being within us. Where does that come in? Because that's the part
Kingdom being within us?
Yeah.
I think Yashakai had mentioned that.
Yeah, I was just coming from a place of anything that becomes manifest in the physical, first is spiritually manifested. Similarly to a lot of the wickedness that we do see, that one time, maybe a decade, 2 decades ago, people would have been saying there is no way that this would ever be happening. And then you look around right now, and that's all you see, right? So in that particular case, if we have that pure understanding or that vision of what the Most High entails for us, first with the foundation of loving your brother as yourself, from that foundation, living in a spiritual city, so to speak, filled with light, and then outside of the walls of that city is darkness. I can even see where that would manifest itself, because even us being the temple of the Most High, right, or the vessels that the Most High uses for his body, or Christ's body, Yahusha's body, we also even in a foreshadowing of the temple that David would have constructed, or with our the temples that would have had like the holy of holies. So again, it's just thinking of it in reference to that. You have a spiritual internal representation, and then a physical manifestation.
Right. Okay. So what's on the internal? We'll have to go through an internal, as we are now. We have to go through an internal changing and allow the Most High to change our hearts so that we can exist in the external expression of what His kingdom will be. Everything has
Yeah,
to be in line, both the spiritual and the physical.
otherwise we could have the prettiest city in the world. Yeah, I mean, if we're not existing how the Most High would want us, then it would have been all for naught. It would have just been all for show. It's like a pretty outer casing and then a dirty inner. So I guess it starts from the inside out, or the way it should, right?
And it takes us back, though, to the function of Torah, to convert the individual, then the family, then the community, then the city, then the world. It goes right out. So whatever you're going to preach or whatever you're going to say has to be started within you. And that is why the Bible says, know ye not that ye are the temple of the Holy Spirit, of the Ruach HaKodesh.
Yep. So everybody has the links. I see a couple people have joined. You can ask any questions here. It's open. It's an open forum that Chris and I and every people are participating in, and it's very lively, full of respect, and people of people who are just walking and living Torah. We're not, and just to reiterate, we're not a part of any specific group. We're not a specific denomination. We're just all students learning from the master teacher. And even when we talk about us, we're not just speaking in the terms of just Black people, because in these festivals, other nations partook and they were grafted into the Israel tribes, is Hebrew tribes. So, we don't want any persons thinking this is all back, specifically saying, oh, this is Black Hebrew Israelite people or anything like that. It's specifically, we're just unpacking scripture as it was written and applying it as it was written. And in that process, it's a message directly to a certain people that all people have access to. So we just I want to make that clear from us and Chris and everybody that we're not affiliated with any group. We're just students.
Right, and we're simply lifting up Torah. And Yahweh does the work of drawing people to himself, and it's not exclusive.
It's not exclusive.
It's you will hear in some other Hebrew Israelite community that it's only Black, like bloodline Hebrews, are gonna make it into the kingdom. Wrong. It's not true.
The purpose of a people is the purpose. That doesn't change.
Right.
But the redemption quality of the salvation is for anybody who accepts Torah, the Most High's teachings.
Right.
Just like it was in the Passover.
Grafted in, of course.
Yep. Just like the Passover. It was not just Hebrews, Egyptians, Assyrians, Ethiopians. If you walked into the Talet and accepted Torah, you were a part of the tribes.
If you were in the house,
you were saved.
You were saved.
Simple as that.
Simple. So the method here is that you cannot accept him and still reject Israel. So you can't say that the church is the new Israel, or Israel has been banished. You can't say that.
Or the Pope or your pastor is
or your pastor, yeah. You have to acknowledge that Yahweh has a remnant that he's going to redeem. And when he comes to redeem that remnant, if you're with the remnant, you're redeemed also.
Just like the Passover.
Just like the Passover.
I caught myself smiling, just sitting here smiling. I would just catch myself a smile a few different times listening to the conversation and just the way I said, the exchange between like-minded brethren. It's one of those beautiful things, and it's an expression of the kingdom. I think even in its the purest form, of the Most High being the king is like and then those in his body kind of like ants in a colony. But literally just catch myself. I just caught myself smiling. It's just a beautiful thing, and it's just another thing. This is probably going to happen a few more times or indefinitely, but just expressing gratitude for this medium, for the platform and what the Most High is doing to the platform.